Chapter 303, You Don't Understand, Part 2-3. Translator Strivon. Of all the people on the viewing platform, probably only Luo Nan understood the emotions of grievance within Tian Si's words. She really did follow Luo Nan's instructions. She headed straight down the stairs of the fire escape. She didn't use the elevator, no matter how tired she was, and she kept far away from the crystal pillar in the center. And yet, she was still unable to escape from Puppeteer's evil clutches. She got controlled by him and became a hostage. Of course, Tian Si's feelings of grievance were secondary to her fear. She was an intelligent person. From the methods chosen by Puppeteer and Black Beetle, she could surmise that the momentum of victory and defeat between the two sides had reversed. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any meaning to her being a hostage. For the kidnappers, her value lay in threatening Luo Nan. But from Luo Nan's perspective, what value did she hold? Why should Luo Nan abandon his great situation for a hopeless reversal just to risk saving her? This situation put Tian Si to near despair. But she still placed her hopes in Luo Nan. However, she grew all the more fearful that Luo Nan would find saving her too troublesome, and would sit back and watch. So her expression of grievance was intentionally conveyed, even though they stemmed from her inner feelings. She could only hope to engender a bit of compassion in Luo Nan, and give herself a chance to live. Tian Si was more or less comforted by Luo Nan's raised arm. However, her response couldn't satisfy the others. Above the heavenly ocean lake, Puppeteer sighed. He walked along the frame structure of the pool, and his figure smoothly made its way to the center edge of the pool. He faced Tian Si, then hooked his finger. Tian Si's feet involuntarily moved. She headed toward the pool, the distance close. The thumb of her left hand held up her jaw, roughly turning her head to slightly look up. She was forced to raise her head to look at the master, who was in control of her life. Come, let us work together for a bit. Puppeteer squatted down and even lowered a hand toward Tian Si. His mouth split into a grin on a face half covered by diving goggles. His teeth gleamed white in this smile. Puppeteer had a decent facial structure. There was the charm of a positive and good-looking guy. But this smile drowned Tian Si completely with feelings of fear. She could only look on helplessly at herself in the goggles' reflection. She was like a marionette. Her entire body was controlled according to this person's will. She extended a hand upward to join with Puppeteer's hand. Then she was flung up. The rough action made her feel like her arm had dislocated. She couldn't refrain from groaning in pain, but soon even this sound was stuffed back down her throat. Puppeteer used his own hand to take the place of Tian Si's. He gripped her neck hard and sized her up face to face. He was extremely satisfied with her deathly white and flushed red complexion, caused by her fear and suffocation. Then when she took in a deep breath of air, he took in the exquisite fragrance of her tidy hair and laughed. Beautiful girl, whether you are willing or not, we are one body. Tian Si really was about to suffocate. She had regained a bit of control over her body, but it was impossible to remove the steel-like grip Puppeteer possessed. Her 2 feet struggled to move. She couldn't do anything else besides this. Puppeteer lifted Tian Si's slender neck as he walked easily back to his original position. Tian Si's feet and hands struggled to move during this process, but soon she ran out of strength. Her body went weak, and her eyes were filled with despair. Puppeteer's gaze had moved toward Luo Nan at this time. Even though Luo Nan was half squatting at the edge of the viewing platform and didn't even turn his body around, the eyes behind Puppeteer's diving goggles remained firmly fixed on Luo Nan. There was not the least bit of relaxation. As for Black Beetle, his callous face stood in front of Heavenly Ocean Lake. He was blocking the only path of rescue to Tian Si. Although things were like this, Puppeteer still didn't feel completely secure. He continued talking. "I have to admit that we've completely underestimated your ability, Mr. Luo Nan. We've underestimated the perfection you've reached with your mental attacks. You dashed our plans, so we learned our lesson and decided to talk calmly and negotiate to solve this issue. For the sake of ensuring this, I specifically made a safety line. Much thanks to the beautiful girl's cooperation. Currently, my mental planes and that of the girl share a bit of a link. Anything I experience will be impartially shared with her. As for how much I can endure, I am confident that I surpass this frail and beautiful girl in this aspect. An attack that is sufficient to defeat me will likely destroy the girl first. So I can only hope that the two of you have a relationship that is close enough." Having said this much, Puppeteer turned to look at Tian Si. "Speak, beautiful girl, have you two slept together yet? No, that's better. Maybe Mr. Luo Nan will feel more regretful if that's the case." Puppeteer sang an excellent performance, so it was natural that he hoped to receive a response from Luo Nan. However, only Zhu Lei's loathing gaze came from over there. Luo Nan still maintained his original posture. Even the arm he sent out in apology toward Tian Si had been withdrawn. It was unknown whether it was due to his injuries or him being disdainful for this defeat. Puppeteer sighed. He had no choice but to urge Luo Nan. "Mr. Luo Nan, it's best to stop wasting time. The police may be idiots, but they should be regaining consciousness right about now. Let us resolve this quickly and return to our respective homes. This will be for the best." Luo Nan still didn't respond. "Tusk, are youngsters these days this cold and detached? Then, let me first warm up the scene and play a small game with this beautiful girl." A smile was restored on Puppeteer's face. He raised a single arm, swinging Tian Si above the water. The devil ray broke through the tempered glass at the bottom of the pool. Now, Heavenly Ocean Lake is probably the world's deepest pool. There's no doubt about that. It is 800 meters, and the only one in the world. I have a premonition that the beautiful girl next to me has decent swimming skills. She can match those cute little friends, medium friends, and large friends inside. Why don't we give it a try first? Hey. Tian Si had originally given up struggling, but the strength of Puppeteer's hand ruthlessly increased as Puppeteer's words entered her ear. This simply squeezed out her remaining energy, compelling her to struggle with her hands and feet. She couldn't speak a word, and what was once beautiful eyes rolled back to white. "Excellent, beautiful girl, you really have a movie sense." Puppeteer laughed in delight, and he shook her a few times, making Tian Si struggle with increasing pain. "Then let us officially begin, the first act of a hero saving a beauty. Action." Heavenly Ocean Lake blossomed with an explosion of water as soon as the words left his mouth. A terrifying dark shadow broke through the water's surface, soaring 7 meters high. It scrapped the soles of Tian Si's feet, and it swung its long tail in a whip-like attack to shear off one of Tian Si's high heels. Her other high heel dropped down during her struggling. "Shoes, my other partner has tender feelings for the fairer sex, but I will tell it to go for your delicate and small feet next. Do you want them to be symmetrical?" The ice-cold water and the burning viciousness assaulted together. Coupled with the terrible and callous words of murder, Tian Si couldn't hold it back any longer. Tears flowed down her face, and she just cried silently. The barrier of her willpower had completely collapsed. At the edge of the viewing platform, Luo Nan still had his eyes closed. His eyelids just twitched twice. It was hard for him to exert energy. He supported himself against the protective glass as he slowly stood up. He turned around to meet the two vicious people face-on, but he still didn't speak. Black Beetle saw the state of Luo Nan's eyes, looking as if they were stabbed blind, and he turned to lock glances with Puppeteer. They were both thinking of the word whiplash in their minds. Black Beetle immediately chuckled. "You're trash as a director. Have you forgotten that we're not in an era of silent films? Even if we are, where's voiceover explanation and dubbing?" Puppeteer was not offended. He praised lightly, "Good idea." He slightly loosened his palm that was exerting force when he said these words. This allowed Tian Si's crying to barely squeeze through her throat, strand by strand. Her breath, stifled with despair, pierced through the sound of heavenly ocean lake's water, intermittently entering the ear. It made Zhu Lei grit his teeth until they creaked. However, Zhang Yingying had already given orders again and again. She forbade Zhu Lei from being impulsive, for this might give Black Beetle and Puppeteer a gap to take advantage of. Zhu Lei could do nothing besides grit his teeth. As for Luo Nan, though his eyes were closed and blood continued to flow, he maintained a calm expression to the point of callousness. The situation remained deadlocked. Puppeteer gained a big headache facing this unwaverable Luo Nan. They were in Xia City, so time stood on Luo Nan and Zhu Lei's side. Puppeteer could only stand in opposition as he made contact with his own people through his own channels. He snapped his fingers a few seconds later. "How about this? Let us switch methods. Beautiful girl, don't cry. I'm asking you, this callous boy in front of us. Did you two plan to come together here? Why are you crying yourself blind? Can you tell me?" Tian Si's willpower had collapsed. She acted as if she was already dead. She couldn't respond. Puppeteer shook his head. "In this case, I will first tell you a secret for the sake of fairness. Our other partner." As he spoke, the mutant devil ray broke through the surface of the water once more. It soared in the air, but it didn't follow the laws of physics and fall. Instead, it defied gravity and floated beneath the dome. It revolved in the air around Tian Si's body. "Our partner can actually fly, yo, so it can use its large mouth and meticulously grind away at the flesh of your small feet. It will slowly eat you. It's better for digestion this way. So, let's work together once more." The devil ray's tail, glowing with electricity, wrapped around Tian Si's small feet as Puppeteer spoke, slightly hooking into a bit of pantyhose. The tail spiraled upward and gradually tightened. Tian Si felt the serpentine sensation on her tiny legs. The electricity even introduced a numbing sensation. Her entire body trembled. A gurgling sound mixed into her hoarse crying. She just wanted to faint already. But this was an excessive hope, for she was under Puppeteer's control. "Pay attention to the time," Puppeteer warned in the end. Tian Si's thoughts and emotions were a complete mess. Fear dominated everything. It was like the claw of a demon had reached into her brain and stirred everything around. Whatever was in there was fished out. Because Gia is senior sister Kingwen's representative work. We can see it from here. Gia must be that society building we went in the first place. Puppeteer tilted his head, and he continued to ask, "Senior sister Kingwen, who is that?" "She's Junior Luo Nan's mother. I have a faint impression, but seems like this information is useless." Puppeteer cast a glance in Luo Nan's direction as he talked. Black Beetle stared in that direction with fixed eyes, and he suddenly thought of something. He got in contact with someone through his wristband. "Hello, you guys are still in gear, right? Yep, that's society building. Hurry up, verify it. Stupid, isn't it easier to break things, set things on fire, and so on?" He raised his arm and opened the speaker function as he spoke. He raised the volume to the maximum. Large bangs and a series of crashes could be heard a second later. The sounds transmitted through, and it seemed that there was no intention of stopping. Luo Nan's eyelids trembled, and he opened his eyes at last. The thick blood accumulated within his eye sockets came flowing out. They carved two paths of blood upon his cheeks. Chapter 304, You Don't Understand, Part 33. Translator, Strivon. Black Beetle knew fully well that Luo Nan's current injury was mostly due to the whiplash of his cheat-like ability. It wasn't really related to what they were doing. However, this didn't affect Black Beetle's delighted mood. Black Beetle returned back up to the viewing platform, his tight expression relaxing. He laughed a hissing laugh toward his wristband. "Snake tongue, oh beautiful snake tongue, I love you to death. Keep going, keep going. Smash what looks valuable." The hoarse voice of a male came through the external speakers of the wristband. "Don't worm your way close to snake tongue if you're that bored. The one who's doing all the work is me. How about I destroy the walls of the building, the outer walls next? I love you too, Tank." Black Beetle was overly excited, so he had an extremely greasy mouth. He glanced at Luo Nan at the same time and spoke without concealing his delight at all. "Oh, I'm sorry. I know that this move is a bit childish of me, but I can't stand how effective it is. Especially when I see your face. I want none other than that expression." Luo Nan didn't talk, but Zhu Lei couldn't hold back from cursing. "You lowlife, you scum. Do you have the guts to face us head-on? I'll smack your skull flat in 3 blows." Black Beetle's sinister eyes swiveled over. His lips split apart to reveal a heavy darkness coming from deep behind his tongue and teeth. "Why, that's truly unfortunate. I am not interested. I just feel that it's such a pity." Soon, Black Beetle's poisonous gaze shifted and pierced Luo Nan's face. "It's such a pity that the Hexria has malfunctioned today. Otherwise, we can stream this live and watch tanks building demolition skills." "Oh, I forget. A wristband is fine too. Cloud City Water Village has relatively stable internet." Luo Nan lightly spat out a mouthful of air as he reached out with his hand to hold on to Zhu Lei, who was close to exploding. Luo Nan leaned back to press against the protective glass. He hoarsely said, "Stop it with the torment. What do you guys want to know?" "Oh, you finally know how to reply." Black Beetle saw Luo Nan admit his defeat. He certainly knew that he grasped Luo Nan's weak spot, and that success was imminent. He felt a cool breeze run down from his skull to cleanse his innermost feelings. Yet even though he felt this way, the utterly sorry experience he had in the 141st floor with Luo Nan was still like a volcano. It rumbled from the bottom of his heart. This wasn't enough, not enough. Black Beetle stopped speaking. He just slowly smoothed down the tie he held in his hand and put it back on his neck. A flip to the left and a fold to the right. These motions were performed a few times. During all this, the loudspeaker of the wristband continued to reverberate with the muffled sound of walls being smashed. Zhu Lei was angry to the point of stomping, even with Luo Nan holding him back. "You bastard! Did you come here just to mess with people?" Black Beetle laughed involuntarily. No rush. They had only just begun. The building is quite large. You won't even see any results unless they go smashing for an hour or two. Gack. Before the words could come out of his mouth, Black Beetle's mouth suddenly was unable to close. His later sounds remained stuck in his throat. Not even a hiccup was able to come out. During this process, his cheeks turned red, green, then purple, like there was a hand of an invisible demon covering his mouth and nose. The air inside and outside his body were blocked off from one another. The feeling of suffocation drowned his entire body. Then came the pain that he experienced before, a needle stabbing into his brain and stirring around. His vision turned reddish-black, and his nervous response was thrown into disorder. His entire body froze and even shook. Luo Nan's voice was like a cold wind that swept past his ear. "So you actually didn't make a safety line? That's truly unfortunate." Black Beetle struggled amidst the pain. His eyes practically bulged out from his eye sockets as he strove to spur his supernatural powers. But for some reason, this mental attack was fiercer than the last by tenfold. The aftermath of the attack came slowly, not retreating at all. Black Beetle put full effort in exerting himself, but he could only touch his gaudy necktie. He grasped it hard, but he was unable to do any further actions. Above Heavenly Ocean Lake, Puppeteer exploded with a shout. "Mr. Luo Nan, let's not do anything excessive. We can properly talk this over." The shout left his throat, and Puppeteer saw Luo Nan turn his head to look at him. As soon as the pair of bloody eyes made contact with Puppeteer's, a cold tremble ran through his heart. Luo Nan spoke softly, "Who's being excessive, me or him?" Puppeteer calmed himself down and forced a smile. "We don't need to go at things this intensely. This is just a routine investigation, nothing more. Look, I haven't harmed a hair on the beautiful girl from start to finish. I was just joking around, just a scare, okay? Then you're smashing my mother's representative work." "That's..." Luo Nan looked slightly downcast. The motions of his body were filled with a feeling of weariness, and it seemed like he was organizing his words. "Black Beetle doesn't have the attitude to properly communicate with me. Actually, I still don't know what in the world you all want. All that's happened is fighting, insulting, and hurting." Puppeteer cursed inwardly in his mind. He cursed both Luo Nan and Black Beetle. He saw the series of clashes from beginning to end. Luo Nan was certainly speaking nonsense when he said that he still didn't know. However, Black Beetle made revenge a priority over gaining intelligence. This was an incontestable fact. In truth, Puppeteer quite admired Black Beetle's way of doing things. The two shared a common language in this point. Ultimately, they didn't consider Luo Nan a threat in the beginning. They just did some safeguards against mental attacks, believing the task of grabbing a half-crippled teenager to be very easy. Their behavior was excessively wanton because of this. Ill actions bore fruit to ill consequences, consequences that one must swallow. One thing that Puppeteer was stronger than Black Beetle in was flexibility. He knew that he had to change strategies. He talked it over with his people in the background, then exposed a sunny smile. "Mr. Luo Nan, we are both members of the society. I believe that we can engage in a calm and peaceful exchange. I already had my companions stop their activity at gear. If our exchange goes smoothly, my companions will withdraw from there immediately. After everything is done, I will even arrange to have the best engineering team to restore all damaged areas to be like new again. Plus, I will give $1 million in compensation. Will you be satisfied with this sincerity?" Luo Nan didn't respond, but he didn't refuse. Puppeteer felt that the trajectory change was a success. His smile grew more splendid. Mr. Luo Nan, our two sides have to display good faith to one another. Look at Black Beetle. Luo Nan's lips moved a bit. Will he affect our exchange? Puppeteer was a bit startled, but the smile remained on his face. No, he won't affect us. Okay. Although Black Beetle's entire body was frozen, his mind was still awake. His eyes and ears were still working, and Puppeteer's words sifted into his ears. Black Beetle felt like his heart was about to explode. He strove to gather all the energy in his body to turn around, but he was still under the effects of Luo Nan's mental attack. His sense of balance was lost, and instead of turning, he fell, and his face planted on the ground. Puppeteer already made up his mind. He didn't even glance over and just muttered to himself, wondering if the safety line he held would be useful or not. And at this time, Luo Nan opened his mouth. "Speak then, what do you guys want to know?" Puppeteer composed himself and calculated the time. A pretext was tossed out from his smiling mouth. On the night of October 7th, at Frost River Reality, Fudong Main Street City Center, a conflict occurred between the Society's Xia City branch and the Order of Justice. Branch President Ouyang Chen intervened during the later stages of the conflict, erecting the so-called logic world. Many matters are unclear from that point onward. Headquarters seeks to reconstruct the truth of the matter, and being unable to has been harmful for administering justice for all. Luo Nan laughed. "You guys should be asking President Ouyang. A lone man serves himself. Two men serve the public. It is hard to place faith in a one-sided testimony. Through a special channel, we came to find out that you, Mr. Luo Nan, had the fortune of entering the logic world through an out-of-body state. You are an extremely important eyewitness, so we want to ask, what special channel?" Luo Nan was very curious. Puppeteer's expression finally went cold. "Mr. Luo Nan, no matter what you ask, this is an investigation by headquarters. I hope everyone will maintain a proper attitude, not digress into side topics, and avoid unwanted consequences." Luo Nan nodded, no longer interrupting him. "Ask." Puppeteer stared at Luo Nan's face and spoke with a heavy voice. "We want to know what you saw in the logic world. Let's narrow the scope a bit. What did Ouyang Chen do? What did An Weng of the Order of Justice do? And why? Not a trace of him could be seen after the incident. Where did he go? There are a lot of things that I don't know. Spit out everything that you do know. This will take some time. Mr. Luo Nan." Puppeteer took a deep breath and vented, by increasing the pressure of his fingers upon Tian Si's slender neck. He used her painful struggling to express his own feelings. "Since we all know that this will be very time-consuming, why won't you be a bit more swift about it?" Actually, Zhu Lei was itching to fight by now, but he was stopped once again. Luo Nan leaned against the protective glass. He pondered for a moment before saying, "If you want to know why An Weng acted the way he did back then, you must understand just what the logic world created by President Ouyang really is." Puppeteer raised the volume of his voice. "Mr. Luo, our time is precious." Rear instructions came before he could finish speaking. "Let him talk. This information is valuable." Puppeteer's cheeks twitched, and he instantly switched to a smile. "So please, be brief yet comprehensive." Luo Nan disregarded the changes in expression over yonder. He just attended to organizing his own words. A few seconds later, he said, "If you look at the mental plane as countless layers of floating curtains, Puppeteer muttered F asterisk to himself. He had no choice but to interrupt Luo Nan. The world recognizes the division of the mental plane into 3 zones, 1 region, and 1 realm. Where did your countless layers come from? Luo Nan didn't speak. His eyelids lifted, and blood-red eyes faced Puppeteer. Although Luo Nan might not be able to see clearly, he still maintained his stance. This lasted until Puppeteer felt himself to be an incurable stupid C asterisk NT. Puppeteer's eyelids twitched. Mr. Luo. Luo Nan had opened his eyes for too long. The burning pain in his eyes caused him to simply close them. He leveled his breathing and spoke a handful of seconds later. Through the formatting theory created by my grandfather, I observed that the mental world was like this. Do you need me to explain what formatting theory is? The self, society, and heaven and earth. The relationship between 3 different formats should be relatively easy to understand for an ability user. I recall that President Aoyang made some remarks on self-logic and the logic of the normal world. You all can't be so complacent as to be ignorant of these concepts, right? 4 or 5 new concepts jumped out consecutively, making Puppeteer a bit dazed. Luckily, he soon received instructions from the rear and adjusted the topic to the right direction. We can postpone the class on theory. Right now, can you describe 1. What the logic world is like? And 2. What sort of outcome did An Weng have in the logic world? In this case, I don't need to use curtains to describe it. Luo Nan raised his head slightly, adopting a posture of recollection. Logic world. Thinking about it now, it is basically a portion of a structure that is torn and forcefully dismantled from within the heaven and earth format, then pieced together to form a temporary production line. It then becomes part of the heaven and earth format, but its rules follow the criterion served by the self format. It takes the heaven and earth format and temporarily channels it into the scope of the self format. Small gears are used to drive large gears. It is truly quite the exquisite structure. Screw your formats, screw your gears. Puppeteer felt that his comprehension ability had been insulted. He wanted to immediately snap Tian Si's neck, but Luo Nan's voice drifted leisurely over just as he processed the thought. It looks like you don't understand. Chapter 305, 4 Gears, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. The mutant devil ray moved back and forth, swimming to and fro within the heavenly ocean lake. Its developed pectoral fins were like wings, and they set off wave after wave in the pool. It appeared a bit restless, mimicking Puppeteer's current mood. Puppeteer still had a smile on his face, but half his facial muscles were stiff. At the same time, a dark and cold whisper came into his ear from the rear. The direction of the sound was unknown. You can't truly believe that you can rake up some things from the kid right now and obtain large merits for your service. If so, your comprehension ability truly has problems. Puppeteer's cheeks became a bit warm. He wanted to curse in his mind. The thought was just formed, yet the rear was still able to see through to even his inner organs. If you have the time to curse inwardly, then you have the time to think about how to continue attracting their attention. Move your mouth. Puppeteer ground his teeth in secret, but that person had a point behind their rebuke. Puppeteer somewhat came to terms with the situation and subtly moved the muscles of his cheeks. He did his best to respond calmly. Mr. Luo Nan can continue. Puppeteer verified the time once more as he spoke, and he also confirmed that he had started recording. He settled on a plan. No matter what Luo Nan would say, he would let Luo Nan talk. He would have Luo Nan's words come in one ear and out the other for now. Later, he would carefully analyze them in detail. Formatting theory, A. Whatever about your mother and father. When I get back, I will make you report even the colors of the underwear of your entire family. Luo Nan seemed to truly believe in Puppeteer's words. His eyes remained closed as he spoke without expression. Then, I will continue explaining. I just finished talking about the logic world. Next, I can briefly describe An Weng's situation. Like hell you finished talking about the logic world. Behind the large diving goggles, Puppeteer's gaze cast downward. He did his best to retrieve information that was related to Luo Nan in his mind. However, Luo Nan's voice maintained its piercing quality. His voice was simply like the low whisper of a demon. It teased Puppeteer's emotions, layer by layer. I'm not too clear on what An Weng was doing. I'll just say what I observed and understood. You must first know that the level of the heaven and earth format is extremely rich. The application of interference in the material plane with the mental plane can form countless types of order frames. Oh, you certainly don't understand this topic. F***. The devil ray in the heavenly ocean lake echoed Puppeteer's emotions. It smacked with its wing-like pectoral fins, releasing the sound of a rumbling explosion. A spray of water filled the sky, splashing onto Tian Si and soaking most of her skirt and pantyhose. However, Tian Si already lacked all response whatsoever. Puppeteer wanted to kill somebody. He was now utterly convinced that Luo Nan was doing this on purpose. The kid had grasped the fact that he didn't understand to obstruct and wear him down in ridicule. All right. Was Luo Nan truly taking him to be a Buddha who could never get angry? Luo Nan stopped talking, but he didn't even open his eyes. He just calmly waited for the devil ray to stop making noise. Do you want to snap your safety line? Maybe the kid is waiting for you to do that. When that happens, my protective spell, which you said isn't worth shit, won't be able to protect you. Luo Nan didn't talk while the rear eerily warned Puppeteer. In the end, Snake Tongue finished with an order. Don't you make me expend mental energy for your sake. Puppeteer's emotions turned to ash after being rebuked once more. He suddenly came to, and he thought about what Luo Nan's objective could be in his series of mockery and provocation. It seemed like it was just as the rear said. Luo Nan wanted Puppeteer to snap his own safety line. Puppeteer's thoughts ran deep. Clearly, on the surface level, after these exchanges, Luo Nan should be able to see that the connection between Tian Si and Puppeteer in sharing mental attacks was an unequal one. Tian Si was tortured to within an inch of her life, while Puppeteer had it quite easy. In fact, even if Luo Nan launched a mental attack, Puppeteer was certain that he could block the first wave. He relied on none other than Tian Si, who remained in his grasp. She could act as a good conductor, ensuring that the damage to himself would fall to a minimum. If Puppeteer were to make a mistake and have his escape path severed, then what would happen? Just look at Black Beetle ahead. He was a living example. A myriad of thoughts flashed through his mind, and a thin layer of cold sweat formed on Puppeteer's back. He instantly relaxed a finger, and even infused some vital energy into her, to avoid constricting her even further while helping circulate her blood and energy. He feared that he would truly strangle his safety line in a moment of excessive emotion, pushing the situation into irremediable circumstances. He faced Luo Nan and explained, "Ahem, apologies. The mutant is not easy to control. I didn't interrupt your thinking, did I?" Luo Nan was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, His voice became deeper and lower. I coined the term order frame. It's normal for you to not understand what it means. So ask yourself, do you need further explanation? Puppeteer stared at Luo Nan's face. The more he looked, the more he felt that he escaped a disaster. Rather, why was Luo Nan explaining these things? Why was he going through with this exchange? In any case, a cover-up only made things more conspicuous. Youngsters these days sure had ruthless hearts. Puppeteer's mind relaxed, then was strung tight again. It looked like Luo Nan still harbored thoughts of a frontal conflict with them. The society's reinforcements would probably arrive soon. Puppeteer needed to accept the many possibilities and do some more preparations. Speaking of which, was the rear still not finished preparing yet? In any case, Puppeteer adjusted his mentality. He resigned himself to what might happen. Anyway, he wouldn't get screwed just by listening. What was he scared of? He adopted a radiant business smile and said, "Of course, it is best if you can explain. I want you to." "How can I not?" Luo Nan truly felt exhausted, having experienced so much. He spat out a breath of air and gasped twice before continuing, "This term I came up with, it comes from an insight provided by Fairchild." Fairchild, Puppeteer gradually lost his mind's prejudice, having adjusted his mentality. His thoughts were much nimbler, so his eyebrows shot up when he heard Luo Nan. The ears of truth. Luo Nan didn't build upon this topic. He followed a prescribed order in explaining. Fairchild once said that observation is order. According to my understanding, he's referring to combing through one's own logic. All the world's objects are observed and illuminated to erect a power of order that is understood and utilized by oneself. And our existences themselves are the products of some natural order. Here lies subjectiveness and objectiveness. Interference occurs between the orders of the mental and the material, like two gears meshing together. If the coupling structure is relatively stable and has an efficient operation, then it becomes a gear set with relatively independent functions. Namely, it becomes an order frame. Order frames can be big or small. In the case of small order frames, an example can be the cultivation methods of our bodies. This example can be divided even further. In the case of large order frames, the myriad of things within heaven and earth can all be incorporated within. Relationships can also occur among the various order frames. The eyes behind the diving goggles blinked. Perhaps it was because he had calmed his mind. Or perhaps it was because he had a clear reference. Puppeteer suddenly felt that Luo Nan had skimmed over the descriptions of gears and formats and substituted easier to understand vocabulary in their stead. Luo Nan rather made some sense. That so-called order frame was like the self-logic of an ability user. Oh, this was Ouyang Chen's concept. Puppeteer liked the more fantastical wordings like what Ouyang Chen used, like domains. Powerful ability users also mentioned such things over at headquarters. They wanted to impose a manifestation of rules upon the material world and use a perspective of pure and thoroughly extraordinary powers to reinterpret the entire cosmos, while giving the mental plane its own place. Of course, when compared to the deep and complicated physical system made over thousands of years of development of the human race, the 50 years of high-speed development of the inner world was far too immature. The things mentioned by the powerful ability users could only act as a motion to be tentatively heard. Right now, this kid was contemplating these complex topics. Did this mean that formatting theory possessed quite a value? I'll have to go through a good digging when I get back. He's really chatting with him. Zhang Yingying's head felt dizzy, and her brain swelled from listening via their three-way communications. She couldn't refrain from grumbling, "Don't just do as you please to the point that you lose yourself." Puppeteer is an extremely dark fellow. "Hey, I think I heard someone mention snake tongue." "It's snake tongue, right?" Luo Nan continued to spout away for Puppeteer. It seemed that he didn't hear Zhang Yingying. In the end, Zhu Lei whispered in confirmation, "Yep, they said snake tongue. There's also a tank. They are currently at gear. They threatened Nanster. That sinister woman is quite famous. She's a true-blooded mage." "Oh shit, I just looked it up. She isn't part of the investigation team at all. She just snuck over." Zhang Yingying smacked her steering wheel. "Right now, the official vice leader of the investigation team is under control, but the people over there might not know about that variable snake tongue. I need to let the reinforcements know. Otherwise, they'll be sent to her belly." Zhu Lei's heart constricted a bit. This person is very hard to deal with. She's a character who has reached the architect level early on, but she and Nanster are a bit alike. She doesn't have a good body, so she stays out of view most of the time, rarely showing herself. However, she specializes in hexes, and she knows interrogation and assassination techniques. She's sinister and vicious. When she really wants to hurt someone, she can stealthily travel over 1,000 kilometers in an out-of-body state to a different city. Oh my God! Zhang Yingying didn't smack the steering wheel this time. She smacked her large legs instead. "Be careful with this one. You must be careful. You've spoken a pile of nonsense there so far, but if she's in her out-of-body state, she can get to Ocean Sky Cloud City from gear with just a thought." Zhu Lei's scalp was going numb from just listening. He immediately opened his mouth to warn Luo Nan, "Nanster." Zhu Lei's voice just left his mouth when Luo Nan pushed off against the protective glass wall with his back to stand up. He gently said, "Words spoken purely with the mouth may not be understood properly. In this case, I can perform a demonstration." Puppeteer keenly observed the subtle changes occur over on Luo Nan's side, especially with Zhu Lei. Zhu Lei was clearly communicating with someone and obtained some new information. His mind went alert, and his body rapidly transitioned into a battle-ready state, all while not changing the expression on his face at all. "Demonstration, I feel you explained things quite well just now. The concept of the order frame, I already understand it. It's actually a domain, a small universe, a different way of talking about the power of heaven and earth. Am I right?" "Wrong." Luo Nan responded directly and efficiently. "The core of what I just said doesn't lie in order frames, but in coupling. The former has a myriad of names, but its origin still lies within the myriad of connections between each other. My mother unified these connections into a classification called coupling. I feel that it is a very appropriate name." At the end, Luo Nan's blood-red eye sockets opened up into small slits. A deep, dark desolation lurked within the color of blood, and they fell in front of the heavenly ocean lake. Atop, a collapsed figure. An excellent example can be seen upon the person who is playing dead. Black Beetle, who hadn't moved for a while and whose face met with the ground, felt a shiver run through his body, as well as his scalp go numb. He felt Zhu Lei in front and Puppeteer in the back, all cut their gazes over like blades. At the same time, he inexplicably felt an ice-cold sensation at the bottom of his heart. The coldness seeped out, cracking like the splitting of layers of ice. It was like the alien whisperings of a deep, dark hole. It lingered, not dispersing. Chapter 306, 4 Gears, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Black Beetle was indeed playing dead. Although Luo Nan's second mental attack was much stronger than his first, it had its limits. Black Beetle had come back to himself after going through the most painful stages. His mobility was restored. However, Black Beetle already lost his place in the current situation. He understood this. The people from headquarters were all an unreliable, cold-blooded sort. And by making a move against Luo Nan, he pretty much severed his friendly relations with the Xia City branch. He jumped around like a pirate until he finally bungled into the ocean. At that moment, Black Beetle hated Luo Nan. He hated Luo Nan through his bowels. His teeth were also itching toward Puppeteer. Now that he thought about it, those two must think the same of him as well. Black Beetle didn't know how to handle such an awkward situation. He could only lie on the ground and play dead. His plan was to adapt to the changes in the situation. Of course, it would be best if things went like when a sandpiper and a clam war together, but the fisherman catches them both. In any case, he had to get through this in one piece. Puppeteer and Luo Nan had quickly forgotten about him during their confrontation. But Black Beetle never expected Luo Nan to easily bring him back in focus after saying those unfathomable concepts. Then Luo Nan mentioned a demonstration, and this made Black Beetle's spine run cold. Luo Nan couldn't possibly have good intentions. Should Black Beetle continue playing dead, or should he get up and resist? Black Beetle wanted to hit the ground as he struggled over this. Luo Nan cared, not the least, about Black Beetle's reaction. He didn't pause speaking at all. In my perspective, Black Beetle's gear set. Oh, I'm talking about order frames. Altogether, there are 4 gears to him from inside to outside. In the center is a large gear formed from the structure of body and soul. Practically all energy has to pass through it to engage in operation. Every ability user has to possess such a central hub. This was quite obvious. Puppeteer easily understood. However, his current attention had more or less deviated. His cold gaze was roaming upon Black Beetle's motionless body. If nothing else, Puppeteer believed that what Luo Nan said about Black Beetle playing dead was correct to an 80% degree. It must be said that he was the one who had first let Black Beetle down. However, it was quite meaningless to overthink this, having committed an offense already. Puppeteer pondered how to deal with this new variable. Aside from the central gear, Black Beetle still has an external gear. It is none other than the 27 beetles scattered around the viewing platform, as well as the 6 beetles on his tie. Puppeteer's attention was drawn back when Luo Nan spoke such precise numbers. Puppeteer did a general sensing, and he found that Luo Nan's number for the beetles scattered around the platform should be right. However, Black Beetle's core item, the gaudy tie, was always covered and sealed. How did Luo Nan verify the number? After a moment of hesitation, Puppeteer didn't take Luo Nan's words seriously. Luo Nan continued explaining, "The 33 beetles may appear dispersed, but they are, in fact, closely connected through soul strength activation. Another gear structure can be formed at any time. This sort of method should be quite flexible. It shouldn't matter if Black Beetle loses a few beetles, but the material is relatively brittle. If the structure truly operates, I'm afraid it only has the strength for one attack. Yes, there's more. His tie looks pretty good. He should be regularly polishing it using gears. What I mean is, he regularly applies his interference ability and channels his energy into it. The tie can act as a medium. It isn't that fragile, It should be quite functional. Black Beetle has two hidden techniques: insect explosion and poison stinger. The former is a corrosive cloud, while the latter is a sword-like killing move. Zhang Yingying's voice came through the wristband, giving Luo Nan supplementary information. This made it so that Zhu Lei could understand things more clearly. Zhu Lei could hear the vibrato within the end of Zhang Yingying's voice. We've really encountered a damnable bastard this time. What the hell? Black Beetle was unable to hear Puppeteer's thoughts, but he could hear Zhang Yingying's commentary. He didn't need Zhang Yingying's commentary. Although the descriptions of gears, order frames, and the like were unfamiliar, Luo Nan had said things that were fused within his blood. They were his basic foothold in this world, and today they were pointed out one by one. It would be strange if he wasn't uncomfortable. Black Beetle reflexively refused to believe in it. No, you're wrong. What you're saying is illogical. Oh, now that I think about it, even though my information is confidential, the society is a very open place. Zhang Yingying and the robotic lady all know my details. This little bastard probably knew my information early on. Is he using words like order frame to cover it up and mess with my mind? Or maybe the kid doesn't even care if I'm awake. Maybe he's using me to draw Puppeteer's attention away. Black Beetle grew more suspicious and exasperated the more he thought. His mind was tangled over this problem for quite some time, but he gritted his teeth in resolution. He would keep the status quo. In any case, his face was stuck to the ground. He might as well leave his pride there and take Luo Nan to be spouting nonsense. He decided not to move at all. At this time, Puppeteer took the initiative to face Luo Nan with question. Didn't you say that there are 4 gears? You only talked about 2. The third gear is a bit different from the first 2 gears. It is independent from Black Beetle's body and soul structure. It can be said to be a coupling, but it is more like a parasite. A parasite can count as a type of coupling, I suppose. Yes, I believe it counts. Luo Nan's words were spoken ambiguously, but they nailed Black Beetle to the ground the instant he heard them. Impossible! Black Beetle felt as if the back of his neck had been cut open by an icy blade. The piercing cold and pain proliferated from his spine to the 2 sides of his body. In the blink of an eye, even his toes were cold. Other people might have been confused by what Luo Nan said, but Black Beetle's mind was absolutely clear. Luo Nan was talking about his natal bug. His ability has its origins in a mutant beetle. He had accidentally swallowed it in his early years, and it fused with his extraordinary powers to erect a unique ability structure. He nourished it endlessly throughout the years, and the mutated demon bug was thoroughly implanted within his body. It became the most important foundation for his abilities. This was his #1 biggest secret in his life. It was always hidden in his stomach to rot, and he never mentioned it to anyone. How could Luo Nan possibly know about it? Unless this kid had a pair of heavenly eyes, allowing him to see through his organs and see all his secrets with absolute clarity. And at this time, Black Beetle thought back once more to the feeling he had previously of a penetrating bright light, unblockable and unstoppable. Wind passing through the gap and light illuminating the earth below. Were there invisible eyes behind this incomprehensible feeling of penetration? Were they always watching, missing not even a hair? Black Beetle's heart beat wildly with the sudden birth of this thought. It beat against the ground through his chest, and the aura around his body began moving. Everyone here was a keen and sensitive person. Naturally, none of this was hidden from them. This guy really was playing dead. Zhu Lei had a straight temperament. He just blurted out the truth. You should just go die. Even though Black Beetle's face stuck to the ice-cold ground, it was like he burst into flames at this moment. Black Beetle's brain rang with explosions, and he heard a buzzing noise like tinnitus pour into his ear. He was filled with the emotions of fear and rage, and these emotions soared like flames, cremating the playing dead plan into ashes. Black Beetle suddenly bent his elbow and propped his body up. Whether or not this was a conscious action, his first reflex was to rush over and strangle that damnable fiend for exposing his life's greatest secret. Zhu Lei was always half a body in front of Luo Nan. He took a step to the side in this movement, covering Luo Nan behind his thick shoulder. Speed was not Black Beetle's forte, but craftiness was etched in his bones. Even though currently his mind was a big mess, he instinctively chose a method of approach as he faced Zhu Lei's stance, which was as sturdy as a boulder. Black Beetle manipulated Zhu Lei's center of gravity with several small changes in movement. He also saw the face behind Zhu Lei's body. A small portion of Luo Nan's face was revealed. Only a single eye could be seen. The eye socket revealed a slit, and the deep red color within absorbed all light. It was pitch black, and it manifested an invisible pressure that pressed against Black Beetle's chest. There's still the fourth gear. It was just harnessed. Before his voice fell, a violent wind blew through the viewing platform half exposed to the sky, while Zhu Lei and Black Beetle collided together. Amidst the repeated sounds of bursting air, Luo Nan's hoarse and weak voice drifted and deflected far. If one didn't concentrate the mind, it might not be possible to hear Luo Nan clearly. Puppeteer wasn't sure if Luo Nan was talking to him. Listening to the tone, it seemed like it. The fourth gear doesn't belong to him at all. Instead, it comes from the outside. At first it was used for protection, like a lampshade covering him to block mental attacks. However, now the coupling method has changed. It has turned from a lampshade into a noose. Black Beetle snorted in retreat. Zhu Lei's close combat ability was greater than his by at least a level. He had no chance of winning in a frontal clash. Plus, Luo Nan's voice always lingered by his ear. The few key words trickled in one after another, causing his heart to shake in fear over and over. It was hard for him to maintain a fighting mood. Black Beetle shifted his body greatly to the side. From now on, he wouldn't show his back to Puppeteer. Only when they formed a narrow triangle did Black Beetle stop moving. His breathing was a bit unsteady as he first stared at Luo Nan, before shifting his gaze to Puppeteer. Then his eyes flitted past every shadow on the viewing platform. His mind also wavered along with his eyes. As for Luo Nan and Puppeteer, the gazes they cast over appeared rather subtle. The intense anxiety and fear transformed into substance. They boiled in his chest. "Snake tongue, talk to me." A hissing sound responded. It came from the remote darkness, and it sounded like the flickering of a poisonous snake's tongue and the slithering of scales. Just when Black Beetle wished to move in his moment of horror, a terrifying numbing sensation rose up from his stomach to drown his organs. It drowned his throat, but its power was yet exhausted. It continued rising. A buzzing sound pierced into his brain. Black Beetle's eyeballs swelled as wisps of blood filled his sclera. Fear and despair crammed inside. It was his natal bug, the mutant he always carefully locked up within his stomach. It existed independently of his internal organs, but today the demon bug had gone out of control. The bizarre hissing sound enticed the mutant demon bug to recover its instinctual fear. It bit through Black Beetle's intestines, stomach, chest, throat, and all the way to his brain. Black Beetle still wanted to struggle, but his enemy didn't give him a chance. As the sensation of numbness, along with the buzzing insect, entered his brain, his consciousness darkened, and his light of life became forever gone. The violent wind covered Luo Nan's drawn-out sigh. Luo Nan didn't want to save Black Beetle. He just wanted to warn him, to cause the enemy to stumble in her dark technique. But he never expected the enemy to utilize such ruthless methods. She simply roused the parasite within Black Beetle's stomach, the mutant bug, and the positions of master and guest were reversed with this change. Black Beetle died frozen within the wind. He was dead through and through. At that moment, his body only existed as an exoskeleton for the mutant demon bug and whatever its whims. Zhu Lei was unsure about what happened. He looked warily and asked Luo Nan, "Is he?" Luo Nan nodded. "He's dead." Before his voice could fall, Black Beetle's mouth opened up. "Yasukasa." Black Beetle's lips and tongue wriggled, as well as his throat. This was quite clear, but the sound that came out was fuzzy and hoarse. In this overexertion, a gleaming green stinger protruded out from his throat. It even shook left and right a few times. Chapter 307, Thunder and Rain, Part 1-3. Translator, Strivon. Zhu Lei held amazing valor when faced with such an aberrant situation, but his human instincts still made his scalp go numb. He couldn't stop the cold shiver that ran down his spine. What sort of monster is this? Luo Nan didn't respond. Instead, Black Beetle's body leaned over a few degrees to face the two directly. The throat continued to reverberate. "Pashasha, what Auka means is sorry." A few of the words were pronounced very articulately by Black Beetle. If one were to close their eyes, they would probably not hear much of a difference between the prior and later parts. Even if one were to blink, one could confirm that a person was talking as long as they ignored the uncomfortable details. Right now, Black Beetle had a restrained, polite expression that was uncharacteristic of him. His pair of hands were clasped together, stiffly protecting his lower abdomen. His head sagged slightly, and he truly had an appearance of apology. An early move has caused several connections to be missing. A transformation process still needs to be undertaken. Please forgive me. Were it not for the unnatural twitching of facial muscles, were it not for the pointed insect limbs poking out of his nose, mouth, and ears, the current Black Beetle's expression would simply be like that of a trained and experienced ceremonial officer. The comparison of before and after, the comparison of internal and external. These comparisons made one's mind shiver with a haunting alienation. Zhu Lei realized what had happened by integrating Zhang Yingying's previous reminder with the situation. He adjusted his positioning, protecting Luo Nan behind his broad shoulders. He directly faced that human yet not human, insect yet not insect thing, and shouted, "Snake tongue! Before the transformation can be completed, I will need to deal with you too. However, just as someone said before, I hope to have some useful exchanges with Lord Luo within this small period of time." Before them was Black Beetle externally, and a mutated demon bug internally, but its will was snake tongues in a strange existence. This could be surmised from the calm, courteous behavior in speech. At the same time, the stiff body had leaned forward a bit, and it had adapted to speaking. It soon straightened back up, and then performed a deep bow with a look of extreme respect. Lord Luo's theory has opened my eyes, breaking through obstacles that plagued me for several years. I have benefited from the lecture. For an instant, Zhu Lei, who was standing between the two, felt like he was the third wheel. This was true in a way. Snake Tongue borrowed Black Beetle's mouth to speak and move. This was just a form. Its thoughts viewed Zhu Lei as nothing. It looked only at Luo Nan. I believe that Lord Luo should also have his own set of gears. Lord Luo is also engaging in a marvelous application of coupling, the power that can see through living beings completely. However, the operation isn't very smooth, correct? As Black Beetle's body spoke, his cheeks revealed convulsions completely out of tune with his tone. A beat later, his two eyes noiselessly disintegrated. Blood splattered, and mossy green appendages of an insect protruded out of the eye sockets, then withdrew again. In this eye-spasming scene, a smile was revealed on Black Beetle's face. Between the pitch-black teeth engraved with lines expelled an inhuman and deathly air. Your gear is extraordinary, but your body is frail. The more complicated and profound the coupling, the greater the pressure that is brought to you. Lord Luo, how long can you endure it? Luo Nan stood behind Zhu Lei. His face felt a bit uncomfortable. It was because of the blood that flowed down from his eye sockets. It was about to dry up. Luo Nan used the white cuffs of his white coat to wipe his face with 2 strokes. Such a small action affected the nerves of his face, bringing him pain. It was as if he were being scraped by a knife. He exhaled, did his best to maintain the tranquility with his face, and softly said, "Did you simply kill Black Beetle to reduce the complexity of coupling, thereby gaining greater control?" Each time Lord Luo speaks, the meaning is clear and the essence is there. Snake Tongue responded through Black Beetle's riddled body. At that moment, she was on the same train of logic as Luo Nan. She could hold a two-way communication with him. Allow me to express my objection. Lord Luo's assertion of Black Beetle being dead is rather imprudent. I merely made alterations to his way of existence. According to what Lord Luo explained, I just took the central gear and transformed it into another shape. Black Beetle's body spasmed violently as the words were released. His entire body shrunk into a ball, and he knelt to the ground, shivering from head to toe. Zhu Lei subconsciously pushed across with his arm, bringing Luo Nan further behind him. He feared that the enemy might spawn something like a demonic moth. A faint yet fine chant came out from Black Beetle right when Zhu Lei moved. The chant merged with the frigid wind atop the viewing platform to blow in all directions. Zhu Lei didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt the strength of the wind weaken. Then, a beat later, little sounds of explosions rang from various areas atop the viewing platform. Zhu Lei's ears twitched. He spun his gaze in a circle, accurately capturing every point of explosion. He just saw light green vapor rise up and diffuse in all these locations. 27 of them, they should be the bugs controlled by Black Beetle. They all exploded. It's insect explosion. Be careful of the nerve gas inside. If the gas has been made more effective through special techniques, its corrosive nature can be quite strong. Zhang Yingying already knew that Snake Tongue had arrived, thanks to her wristband communications. She was even more worried and anxious now, but she feigned calmness in order to prevent the 2 rookies from panicking. It should be quite exhausting to keep acting like this. Zhu Lei's eyelid twitched. The volume doesn't appear to be big, but what are her intentions by gathering the gas all together from all sides? Zhang Yingying's mind went blank. Gather. Luo Nan inserted himself into the conversation. Snake Tongue is controlling the airflow atop the platform. Lister, can you take the stairs while carrying me? No problem. In any case, Zhu Lei would have to put up with it even if there were problems. Then let's forget it, we're a bit too late. Luo Nan's voice grew hoarser. His body was indeed under enormous pressure. He was becoming weaker and weaker, but his mind was glowing brighter and brighter. Things were just as Snake Tongue guessed. Luo Nan had achieved a coupling relationship between his gears under his roughly formed order frame. The coupling might not have been smooth, but it was enough to give birth to a divine light capable of illuminating the inside and the outside, reaching everywhere and giving Luo Nan amazing foresight. Unfortunately, the difference between the enemy's experience and Luo Nan's experience was great. When facing the mage Snake Tongue and her treacherous and mysterious mind, Luo Nan's reactions were slower by a thread. Right then, the frigid air current atop the platform was under the control of a fine spell chant. The winds were tamed and acquiescent. The winds whirled, gathering the scattered green poison clouds over, one after another. The layers of pressure headed toward Luo Nan and Zhu Lei. They looked like rolls of fine cotton at first glance. They floated, not dispersing, and converged into screens, surrounding them at all sides. The way out of the platform was blocked off, sealing Luo Nan and Zhu Lei inside. Zhu Lei looked around in a circle, the veins of his forehead throbbing. He had the mind to use a fist of gale to break through these layers of poison mist screens. However, he thought about how masterful Snake Tongue's wind control spell was, and he hesitated from acting against evil so as to prevent harm to innocents. He had reached the realm of obtaining his sign. He might not have to fear the poison mist, but what about Luo Nan? It was impossible for Luo Nan endure this torment with his body. Snake Tongue's method of playing things down had stabbed a lethal point of weakness into them. What should they do now? Wait for the poison to vaporize? Disregarding the fact that the platform was constructed in a half-open style, Snake Tongue had made this space no different than a completely sealed room. And this wasn't the end of things. Zhu Lei's eyelids twitched, and he saw Black Beetle, who had fallen to the ground with spasms, slowly crawl up from the ground. Black Beetle's body was still a bit rocky, and his bloody cavities 4 eyes endlessly spewed blood. His face was skewered with several holes by sharp insect limbs, but he still revealed a courteous smile. The transformation has been complete. I've made Lord Luo see a joke. Before the final syllable ended, Black Beetle's mask-like smile shattered into pieces. In its place was a hatred and madness warped to the extreme. The 2 bloody cavities upon his face spun toward Luo Nan's location. He spoke through gnashing teeth, "Little bastard who hides beneath a woman's skirt. Go die." The sudden change in aura made Zhu Lei's scalp explode. The scene before Zhu Lei's eyes blossomed. Black Beetle was charging over with a roar. He directly rushed through the green poison screen and punched straight out. The charge pushed the poison screen into a chaotic eddy, and Zhu Lei could smell the acridity. He thought about Luo Nan behind him, and Zhu Lei flew into a rage. He made a sharp shout, and his powerful body actually expanded by a factor. His body was akin to a giant's as he unleashed heavy blows. A bang exploded out, and Black Beetle was knocked back at a speed even faster than his approach. The bone of his right arm was smashed into 3 sections by Zhu Lei. He was again suppressed by heavy fists. The fists warped and collapsed his forehead inward, smashing a depression into his skull. But in the instant, Black Beetle was bombarded back. Black Beetle ripped off his tie with his left hand and swung it in one stroke. It slashed silently across Zhu Lei's chest, and it was as if Zhu Lei's clothes were cut by a sharp blade. They instantly split, and a white line appeared on his chest. The line rapidly turned red as it filled with blood. A dark color even shone through right on the eve of breaking through. Zhu Lei gritted his teeth, uttering not a sound. He just looked unwaveringly at Black Beetle. If this was a normal situation, the exchange of blows would have led to Black Beetle's brain exploding to mush. Zhu Lei would have won already. However, the fellow before his eyes, with his twisted expression and cracked skull, did not have brains come out, but part of the shell of an ugly demonic bug. Black Beetle even grinned with laughter. "Oh, the open wind feels so good. Why have I never discovered this before?" Zhu Lei's mind shuddered with aversion. He didn't know if it was Black Beetle speaking or the demonic bug. What the hell was this guy now? Before Zhu Lei could finish this thought, Black Beetle's expression went through another change. His lips and teeth opened, and he conveyed Snake Tongue's will. "Lord Luo, is Black Beetle dead or alive like this?" Behind Zhu Lei, Luo Nan spoke in a low yet steady voice. "It is merely a damaged soul that's been molded by you into a wraith-like monster." That's one interpretation. Snake Tongue didn't deny it. "The scale between life and death is fuzzy from the perspectives of you and I. You say he's dead. I say he's living. We each have our own criterion. However, I want to ask, if Lord Luo becomes like this, will you have the same thoughts then?" "Of course, I certainly won't treat you as roughly as I have Black Beetle. I will use the most meticulous of techniques to slowly mold you. I'll have Lord Luo's soul become the most precious of my collection." Under Snake Tongue's control, Black Beetle faced Luo Nan and Zhu Lei with another bow. Green beetles substituted the brain within the split skull. They squirmed a bit. "When that happens, I will remold a more suitable body for Lord Luo to house your dazzling soul. If fortune would have it, we can even converse about research. I want the thoughts of a genius, thoughts on perfecting order frames and the like. This is my plan. What do you think, Lord Luo?" Chapter 308, Thunder and Rain, Part 2-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan made no response whatsoever when faced with Snake Tongue's courteous and respectful behavior through Black Beetle's body. He leaned against the protective glass. His eyelids drooped down, and he became short of breath. He gave others the impression of increasing weakness. The poisonous mist closed in all around. Luo Nan, with his poor physique, was in quite a life-threatening situation. Snake Tongue might not even need to expend any more energy. Just by saying a few more words, Luo Nan might simply fall. "Lord Luo," Snake Tongue still asked in a civilized and courteous way. Disregarding the shortcomings in attractiveness of her medium, there wasn't anything that could be fussed about. Zhu Lei could no longer bear the hypocrisy. He sneered. "No wonder you have a tongue in your code name. You speak a lot of nonsense." "I'm truly sorry. I can't think of anything I need to do right now besides talking." Snake Tongue drove Black Beetle to step 2 paces forward to allow Zhu Lei to face the formidable foe. Currently, Black Beetle wasn't really much, but if the poison screens were disturbed a few more times, there was an 80% chance that Luo Nan would fall. This was the reason why Snake Tongue was acting so leisurely. Zhu Lei gnashed his teeth in anger as Snake Tongue continued speaking. "I can end this situation much quicker, but I feel quite ashamed. My humble cultivation hasn't reached perfection. I can't guarantee the complete retention of your light of intelligence. What information remains mostly relies on luck. The most likely possibility would be the erasure of Lord Luo's fascinating theories. That would really be a pity. Snake tongue. Above the heavenly ocean lake, Puppeteer also had enough. He looked at his wrist once more to confirm the time. Though the police of Zia City and the security department of Cloud City Water Village were complete trash, they were certainly heading over right now. What if the Zia City branch of the society were on their tails? They had barely obtained the upper hand. They needed to take Luo Nan into their hands and not let him escape. Mind your own matters. Snake Tongue's voice rang directly in his ear, this time with a warning that was neither light nor heavy. Luo Nan, who maintained silence all this time, finally spoke. You asked about An Weng a while ago. Aren't you digressing from the topic? Idiot, you're still in the mood to chat. Shut the hell up. Stop breathing. Zhang Yingying was already driving up a storm in the metropolis. This year, her driving score was shot to nothing. Now, she even expended a lot of mental energy, worrying over this troublemaker. She wanted to tear her steering wheel off her car in her hate. Listen to Sister Zhang, Nanster, don't talk. Zhu also wanted to curb Luo Nan from talking. Luo Nan, however, patted him on the shoulder in slight reassurance. Black Beetle continued to act like a mouthpiece in front of them, helping realize a dialogue between Snake Tongue and Luo Nan. From my viewpoint, An Weng's location and the like really don't stir my emotions as much as Lord Luo's theories. Then I must truly thank you. Luo Nan continued to speak in a weak voice. Therefore, you intend to continue discussing related topics until I fall to the poison mists. Or perhaps, you've finished constructing your fortifications. The viewing platform was suddenly without sound. Fortifications. Whether it was Zhu Lei, Zhang Yingying, or even Puppeteer, they all encountered a barrier in understanding. They were stunned for a time. Snake Tongue probably had the same emotions. She spoke through Black Beetle a full 5 seconds later, but this time the tone was much graver than before. Lord Luo, you've been observing me all this time. I am forming conjectures about you. The sound of Luo Nan's breathing turned rapid. A smidgen of poison had entered him, and at that moment the effects were becoming increasingly obvious. However, he still spoke. I am thinking. Based on your ability, you were originally going to come over here with Black Beetle and the others. With the element of exceptional surprise, I probably wouldn't have made it this long if you had. However, you didn't come. You just made a lampshade, doing just better than nothing. It just doesn't make sense for a killing machine to act as a logistics person. Therefore, I made a conjecture. Of course, I also had the support of someone's intelligence. I thought that you were bound to come over via an out-of-body state. It is convenient, but it is fragile. Especially against me, an expert in sensing and mental attacks. You should have quite a cautious nature, someone who cherishes her own body. You still haven't launched your final offensive. Maybe you're scared of expending too much energy, allowing me to detect you and catch you. Your defensive ability can't compare to Black Beetle's and the others. Snake Tongue was silent for several seconds before speaking. Right now, has Lord Luo discovered my position? I'm not too sure yet, so let's do what you suggested. Let's keep chatting. Snake Tongue stopped uttering a sound. She seemed to be pondering Luo Nan's means. Zhu Lei, Zhang Yingying, and Puppeteer. These 3 people were unable to speak a word for a time. So there was another battlefield going on atop the platform, and they were completely ignorant of it all. Although Luo Nan had brought this out to the open, the situation was as so. Everyone's gazes, aside from the people absent from the scene, all congregated upon Luo Nan's body. However, they were unable to see even a clue. Luo Nan's complexion still wasn't very good. The protective glass behind him had an arc to it, so he was uncomfortable as he leaned against it. He painfully adjusted his body's posture, and he finally felt a bit comfortable. He extended 2 fingers and gestured with a swipe. A second passed, and Snake Tongue spoke through Black Beetle. "Lord Luo means, I'm answering your question." Luo Nan seemed to be interested in talking. "You just asked me about my order frame. According to the standard that is Black Beetle, my order frame contains 2 gears, one big and one small." Luo Nan had spoken simply, but the implications were much more complicated. There were 2 gears. The large one was the format pyramid. It represented the soul strength stored within the external neuron, as well as the external neuron itself. During one of Zhu Shenyu's lectures, the large gear was called an external power. Zhu Shenyu said that it was like an enormous iceberg. Its power was strict. The small gear was the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, the progress Luo Nan made in 10 days of cultivation. It was an extension of the system of his body, but it had yet to mature. It remained a mere dinghy floating outside the iceberg. There existed certain coupling relationships between the large and small gears from the very beginning. The infusion of soul strength from the format pyramid allowed the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to rapidly develop and strengthen. This was just one relationship between them. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice and the format pyramid intercommunicated and overlapped information. This was the second relationship. The second relationship was quite notable. In the very beginning, whether it was Black Beetle or Puppeteer, when Luo Nan tried to use clairvoyance and see their life sketches, they were both obscured by a dense haze. There was interference. Then there was the new coupling relationship, which was like wind passing through the gap and light illuminating the earth below. After this coupling relationship was formed, the two people's life sketches, and even the entire Star River landscape, had most of the turbid clouds and dark mist brushed away. Layers upon layers were penetrated, and mysteries no longer existed. It was impossible for Luo Nan to speak these details. What he spoke now, especially the discussion with Snake Tongue, was a technique to gain a better understanding by explaining what he knew through his own words. He was further refining his embryonic ideas. So he really didn't care whether or not Snake Tongue responded. He just talked, caring only for himself. My problem lies in the fact that these 2 gears aren't on the same order of magnitude. They are also too close together. They lack a fair composition. Even when they form a coupling relationship, it is hard to avoid wear and tear due to their differences. His face turned toward the heavenly ocean lake. He laughed. He clearly blew a fuse, but this rarely seen expression of his made the nearby puppeteer's scalp go numb. A special structure is certainly needed to facilitate a motive connection between the gears, with their enormous difference in masses. A link in between is a necessity. Like the devil ray, it charges and rushes within the crystal pillar, killing numerous marine life. It paves a path of death around it, but just a small distance away, many small fish and prawn can rely on its discarded food and waste to grow. Puppeteer subconsciously looked down below his feet. He only woke up halfway through his action. The conversation was running way too off-topic. Even Snake Tongue was slightly unable to follow Luo Nan's tempo. In the end, she just let out a sigh containing an unclear emotion. "Lord Luo, you really make one revere you when you use unique methods in your ponderings. However, we are still people of the commons. It isn't good to diverge too far from the level of the normal world. Black Beetle suddenly made a sudden step forward as she spoke. Zhu Lei wasn't sure what sort of stage the situation had developed to, but his duty to protect Luo Nan would never change. He subtly bent his body like a bow. He entered into a combat stance. Luo Nan paused the conversation that only he could understand. His blood-filled eyes faced Black Beetle's warped and deformed face, but he ultimately just glanced at him to look downcast. "You don't want to discuss theories. I'm very worried about Lord Luo's current state." Snake Tongue's concern was like Black Beetle's face. All that was left was a shriveled and empty husk. As she spoke, the green poison screen noiselessly gathered and approached the center. The scope was done in an extremely cautious and subtle manner. Black Beetle pressed forward as well. His speed wasn't quick, but his center of gravity swayed and changed seemingly randomly. He seemed to be as good as 80% of his peak state. Zhu Lei had to pay attention to the poison screen of mist, had to stay locked on to Black Beetle, and also had to worry about Luo Nan's state. His mind was split in all these directions. It was really hard. At this time, Zhu Lei heard Luo Nan cough out a breath of air behind him. He was shocked, and he turned around to look, ignoring Black Beetle's movements in front. Black Beetle's side seemed to be shocked as well. He unexpectedly didn't seize the opportunity to cause difficulties. Luo Nan didn't care about how the others acted. He took in a deep breath, then he slowly exhaled. He couldn't avoid the toxic environment of the surrounding poison curtains of mist. He subconsciously moved his jaw during this process, dispersing the feeling of numbness in his face. The main ingredient of Black Beetle's insect explosion poison should be a polypeptide neurotoxin, with the greatest likelihood of it being ISTX3. Normally, it propagates via the bloodstream to directly affect ion channels and cause a strong paralysis effect. But Black Beetle made huge adjustments in its synthesis for the sake of increasing its efficiency. He increased the likelihood of a respiratory infection, but this reduced the toxicity. Luo Nan didn't even raise his eyes, having spoken to this point. He just breathed a laugh. "Would you say that this dialogue is now on the level of the normal world? Mrs. Snake Tongue, we had come to an agreement to engage in discussion. It's not good to withdraw midway." Snake Tongue could hardly hide her astonishment. "Lord Luo has also researched neurotoxins. I've taken many drugs. I can resist the neurotoxin for a bit of time." Though Luo Nan said this, he had many years without the format foundation as a container. He also just recently pierced through to the eye's orifice, stimulating the functions of his human body. Today, Luo Nan was likely in big trouble. He absolutely wasn't as he appeared, breathing in toxic gas and scaring people in amusement. Luo Nan leaned against the protective glass and switched to a more comfortable position. He absolutely wouldn't tell Snake Tongue that half his body had numbed already, that he would tumble if he were to take a single step. However, his nervous system was in an extraordinarily excited state due to the stimulation of the neurotoxin. This was precisely what he needed the most. Chapter 309, Thunder and Rain, Part 3-3. Translator Strivon. Luo Nan's bullshitting skills were truly rising as he spoke about frames and gears. By pairing his skills with a bunch of jargon, his effectiveness in scaring people greatly improved as well. Snake Tongue was silent for a time. She was probably reassessing Luo Nan's state. As for Zhu Lei, he wasn't quite clear on what was going on, but he let out a breath of relief when he saw the appearance Luo Nan had donned. His entire self relaxed. "Nanster, you're amazing." Most of Zhu Lei's thoughts were focused on Luo Nan when the poisonous screens of mist surrounded them. The feeling of apprehension was hard to take, for he couldn't utilize his skills. Now that most of his worries of the future were gone, the pressure moved away from his mind. The energy of his body circulated much more smoothly. Luo Nan gave Zhu Lei a big thumbs up. He wasn't planning on telling him the truth. Losing control of half his body was quite an uncomfortable feeling, but it was worth it if he could liberate Zhu Lei's combat power. It's just that Zhu Lei still had some lingering fears. He was worried that the enemy would use some dark methods against them, and he whispered, "Nanster, let's take the chance. I'll carry you down." "No, we're going on the offensive." Luo Nan's voice was lower and deeper than before, but his will was unwavering. The veins of his forehead faintly throbbed, as the coupling between the heart lantern of the eye's orifice and the format pyramid formed the glimmering wind. The glimmering wind brushed across the viewing platform, as well as most of the skyscraper itself. It illuminated every nook and cranny, including the life sketches of every living being. The enormous quantity of information was difficult to process. Luo Nan had to approximately discern the information based on the distance and level of danger. Under the accumulation of information, Luo Nan formed response plans one after another, changing them and refreshing them. Luo Nan did not lack in ideas. He was lacking in the judgment ability that was formed from the accumulation of experience. In this situation, the principles formed by his predecessor's experience became the #1 basis for his decision-making. The principles of mentality taught by Crag Burst were the basis of Luo Nan's actions. Luo Nan took his own conviction and schemes and erected them upon unwavering elements of victory and superiority. These were what forged his steel will. "We don't have the energy to continue being tangled up with Snake Tongue. Right now, we need to get rid of Black Beetle. Without this starting point, Snake Tongue can only make a move in the mental domain. Victory is ours at that point." Zhu Lei's gaze cut to Black Beetle. He felt that the distance was appropriate. Both advance and retreat was all right. It's just that variables would inevitably occur once combat started. It was just a moment of hesitation, but the enemy made their move first. Low syllables came out of Black Beetle's mouth. They sounded like part of a spell chant, as well as the hissing of bugs. The two fused together, and the poison screens of mist closed in from all directions. The color of green suddenly deepened as a gurgling sound rang through the air. With the help of Zhang Yingying's intelligence, Luo Nan and Zhu Lei realized that Black Beetle was forcing the poison mist to catalyze. It wasn't just neurotoxin now. The poison mist became corrosive, and it came pouncing over. Snake Tongue probably did this because she felt that the neurotoxin wasn't effective enough, so she switched to a corrosive type to see if it would give more damage. Luo Nan witnessed this scene and was not really surprised. He didn't cover up his previous speech at all. This was the same as pressuring Snake Tongue into making a move. Luo Nan instantly spoke faster, telling Zhu Lei, "I recall you mentioning that you've perfected the latent thunder technique." Luo Nan didn't wait for Zhu Lei to respond. He flipped through the pages of the notebook he always held within his hand until he reached the last page. Here lay the last of the paper men he had made. There was something different about it. Its paper material ignited into a blaze of fire in midair, as it pounced into the poison screens that were on the verge of closing in on them. The special material and special technique formed a special blaze. Its quality was out of the ordinary, but this was an extremely rough method of response from Luo Nan. The corrosive poison mist exploded into flames as they made contact, splashing out large gushes of fire and causing the toxicity to become violently volatile. In an instant, before Zhu Lei were an acrid odor and the sight of flame. Zhu Lei eventually realized Luo Nan's intentions while his scalp was frying. He immediately gritted his teeth as he gave a low shout, collecting the energy of his entire body. Then his energy exploded in an eruption. The martial artist clothes upon his body rang with crackles, and air blasted away from his body, dispelling the assaulting flames at once. This move could defend against fire, but not poison. The toxicity was excited in an instant, growing fiercer than before by countless fold. Even Zhu Lei felt his limbs go a bit numb. Luckily, the clear sign within his body shone with its illumination. It quickly dispelled and suppressed these negative feelings to the minimum, wiping them clean. Zhu Lei was most concerned about Luo Nan still. He was just about to turn around when he was pushed from behind. Blitzkrieg go. The force wasn't great, but it was expressed in a direct and efficient way, wiping away the distracting thoughts from Zhu Lei's mind. Zhu Lei growled. He relied on his strong body to break into the region of mist, which was still spraying with flames, battering his way through. As he saw Zhu Lei throw himself ahead, Luo Nan's body subconsciously wanted to slide to the ground. His muddy vision turned even fuzzier. However, there was the glimmering wind formed from the coupling between the format pyramid and the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The wind blew across all orifices, illuminating every part of the body. The feeling of numbness was alleviated substantially, and strands of heat rose up, giving Luo Nan a bit more strength. In the end, Luo Nan leaned steadily against the protective glass, escaping making a fool of himself. The devious figure hiding deep in the mental plane behind layers and layers of defenses was incapable of seeing through this hole. Zhu Lei's charge was a move that shifted around the roles of aggressor and defender. Black Beetle had already pressed a certain amount of distance when Zhu Lei's sudden assault came. Zhu Lei's awesome explosive power made him like a ferocious tiger crossing a river, roaring through. The powerful energy surrounding Zhu Lei's body tore the remaining poison screen of mist into shreds. Black Beetle's control over the poison mist was completely broken, but then his feet swayed as he sidestepped in time, dodging Zhu Lei's frontal charge. Zhu Lei's gaze was vicious, as his tall and strong body instantly whirled around like flowing water. He charged with a shoulder and struck with an elbow, drawing out close-range strikes which were akin to the howling wind and torrential rain. His tiny range shifted and changed in a manner that was in no way inferior to what Black Beetle could do. Black Beetle's response was inferior to his response back when he was normal. He avoided the shoulder charge, but was unable to dodge the elbow strike as his body suddenly stiffened. Zhu Lei seized this chance. A growl burst from his throat, and he unleashed a fist brimming with power. One fist came after another as he pummeled Black Beetle in the shoulder, neck, and face. At first there was no sound, but after the 3 punches landed, there suddenly came the explosive sound of thunder. The force pierced through the skin, flesh, skull, and brains. The latent energy exploded in vibrations, and Black Beetle's ugly and deformed skull thudded and exploded apart. Within the shards of the skull bone, the beetle's body suddenly shriveled. It looked like it was about to explode, but it actually did this to avoid most of the punching pressure. It firmly pulled back downward, following the broken veins in the neck and sinking deep within Black Beetle's ruined body. The image, the scene, was aberrant and horrifying, but Zhu Lei had already entered a combat state. He turned a blind eye to this and drew his energy to let loose another hammer of a punch. Thunder rang once more, and the neck, shoulders, and chest of Black Beetle's ruined body caved in, becoming seriously deformed. He no longer had the form of a human. If any normal person had such an appearance, they would be 100% dead. However, Zhu Lei felt that this wasn't enough. He fixed his gaze upon Black Beetle's ruined body and unleashed another heavy hammer of a blow. But then Luo Nan's thoughts directly entered Zhu Lei's mind. Retreat. Zhu Lei didn't even think with this stimulation from Luo Nan. He withdrew his fist, and his body flickered in retreat. It happened at nearly the same beat. Black Beetle's critically crushed chest suddenly expanded. The force was so much that it looked like it would explode apart entirely. But just when the chest was on the verge of bursting, an invisible force forcefully terminated it. In the end, only the shoulder and neck, which were meat paste by now, exploded in a mist of blood. The bloody glow gurgled within the air. The later part of the blood was greater than the prior, spraying toward Zhu Lei's head. But Zhu Lei launched a fist filled with energy, forcefully shaking the blood apart. Zhu Lei had no intentions of relaxing after escaping from this danger. He suddenly turned to look at Luo Nan, and he saw lightning inexplicably flash within the eye sockets of his best friend. Before he could understand what happened, Zhu Lei heard a shriek of despair. The ugly green beetle emerged once more from the upper half of the ruined human body. Half of its shell was fused with the damaged blood and flesh. The other half, which included the head, back shell, etc., ignited with flames and smoke. The flames flew and curled upward, forming the faint shape of a human struggling in pain. It was Black Beetle's wraith. Right then, Black Beetle could be considered awake. His shrieks were filled to the brim with despair and fear. His emotions of fury had sunk from the surface. Right then, he was in a state that was neither man nor demon, and his emotions were born from this. Snake tongue, snake tongue. All of Black Beetle's vocal organs were obliterated into nothing. His current screams were from the materialization of intense negative thoughts. They were like curses and also pleas. Many thanks for your help. The voice was extraordinarily gentle and refined. It quietly entered the ear like a breeze. This was the product of using the air currents atop the viewing platform as a musical instrument. The air was seeped with indiscernible telepathy, and thus sound was produced. The sound didn't match the person. Who could ever think that this was snake tongue? The gentler snake tongue's response was, the more intense Black Beetle's reaction became. The intense emotions caused the flames to become more like a burning man in appearance. But regardless, it was only a plant growing in a flower pot of blood and flesh. No matter how it twisted and struggled, it couldn't leave and it couldn't die. It could only stagger around in its half-ruined body, a scene that caused shivers to run down one's spine. Snake Tongue didn't feel like chatting leisurely with a fellow whose self-awareness was on the eve of being extinguished. Her tone grew all the more relaxed and gentle. I truly need to give much thanks to Black Beetle to be able to urge Lord Luo display his expertise, and for giving me the chance to make contact with Lord Luo in this manner. Zhu Lei really didn't quite understand what Snake Tongue was saying, but Snake Tongue had used dark and treacherous methods before, and now she was chatting very openly. When he heard her tone, he instinctively felt that things were far from good. Nanster. Luo Nan leaned against the protective glass. His bloody red eye sockets were locked on to Black Beetle. Some of the stopped blood flowed down once more, dripping down from his chin to his white coat, leaving an eye-catching blotch. When Black Beetle's body swelled and neared the point of explosion just a moment before, Luo Nan had used his soul's strength to forcefully interfere with the gears within, effectively suppressing them. Otherwise, what would have happened wouldn't be a spray of bloody mist. It would be a meat bomb. Zhu Lei might not have been able to take it, and in an environment with rapidly spreading poison, Luo Nan wouldn't be able to take it either. Luo Nan's technique of interference reached the peak of mastery. He needed to have the visual power to completely see the corporeal and incorporeal of the enemy's foundation. Only then could this be done. However, the dealer that was Snake-Tongue had buried a trap here earlier on. Luo Nan's soul strength was locked firmly by her when he seeped it inside, and then began a wrestle of power. The soul strengths of the two collided head-on for the first time, and the situation turned into a dangerous deadlock. If Luo Nan were to cower just a little, the meat bomb would explode. "Retreat backward," Luo Nan squeezed out 2 words between his teeth. Zhu Lei hesitated a bit, then he moved back. The sound of Snake-Tongue using the wind to speak was like a shadow following a body. It was relentless. It seemed she was in the mood to talk again. Looking at the results of soul activating the paper men, Lord Luo's interference ability, strength, far exceeds the scope illustrated by intelligence. Aside from the fact that the intelligence personnel have failed in their duties, this result comes from the coupling of 2 gears. It must be a method that was comprehended just recently. Luo Nan responded coldly as he calculated Zhu Lei's safety distance. "Correct, but you don't get bonus points." But Lord Luo should understand it clearly. The source of your problems don't lie in your interference ability. It lies in the critical imbalance between body and soul. AKA, it is the problem of the large disparity between your small gear and your large gear. The more breathtaking your performance is right now, the graver the consequences you bring upon yourself. So you used Black Beetle to manufacture this trap for me. Luo Nan knew that Snake-Tongue's ultimate goal wasn't to force a deadlock. Even if they were in a deadlock, Snake-Tongue still had a soul strength circulation technique that reached near perfection. She increased the pressure bit by bit, forcing Luo Nan to increase his invested soul strength accordingly. They twisted around each other, forming a powerful and incorporeal maelstrom. It was like a close combat wrestle on the mental plane. This was precisely Snake-Tongue's meticulous plan. She used this method to force Luo Nan into a basic tug-of-war, into a pure wrestle. Her ultimate goal was to avoid the powerful and sharp long-range attacks Luo Nan was capable of. Now Snake-Tongue had revealed the true location of her soul. She had performed layers upon layers of fortifications, dispelling Luo Nan's explosive power of soul strength. It could be said that she was secure and had nothing to fear. Luo Nan exhaled. "All right, I need to say something. Your warping of Black Beetle's central gear to force Black Beetle's 4 gears in mutually affecting each other is absolutely not coupling. Of course, this sort of structural relationship is coarse and rudimentary. It has no beauty." Snake-Tongue's gentle voice was like that of a teacher reciting poetry. "The world doesn't follow one's fancies. 9 times out of 10, we ultimately need to use the most realistic of methods to resolve problems. So I used a low-grade structure to draw over Lord Luo's interference and restrict your soul's strength. Next, I will use this ugly wrestle of power to touch upon the limits of your body, a bit at a time, until your body completely falls apart. Perhaps this method will make it hard for your light of intelligence to remain, but I will be able to obtain something first-rate for my collection. Collect your ancestors, puffed Zhu Lei in fury. He directed a deathly glare toward Black Beetle's wraith and ruined body. Even though he didn't understand the details, he knew the crux lay over there. He could pulverize whatever hook or trap there was. Though his body was still moving backward, the degree of his movement turned small. He could launch an opposite attack at any time, at a speed that would surely surprise the opponent. But Luo Nan called out to him, stopping him once more, "Lister, calm yourself. It's rare for someone to chat with me." Luo Nan's body was unable to maintain supporting itself as he spoke. Luo Nan slowly slid to sit on the ground. Zhu Lei turned to look, his face flushing red when he saw Luo Nan's state. He gritted his teeth so hard that they were going to crack, but Luo Nan still gave Zhu Lei an appeasing gesture. He wanted Zhu Lei to go back. As Zhu Lei was tangled in this conundrum with gritted teeth, Luo Nan slightly tilted his face up high. He faced the location of Snake Tongue's true soul and spoke gently as if he were in a casual chat. "Mrs. Snake Tongue, I must correct you on one of your views. The coupling relationship can be coarse or fine. It can be of high quality or of low quality. But most of all, it can be divided into having it and not having it. If there is coupling, then there is coupling. If there isn't coupling, then there isn't coupling. You can't use coarseness and low quality as an excuse. Do you agree?" Though Luo Nan remained calm when faced with a desperate situation, Snake Tongue didn't have any feelings of admiration. She just smoothed out her plan from start to finish and reconfirmed the strength of her fortifications. Only after she concluded that everything was certain did she quietly laugh. The way Lord Luo speaks has a certain arrogance that says, "Who but myself can do it?" I don't quite understand. Are you flaunting that you are the only one who can understand your mother's research area? Luo Nan really did carefully consider this before shaking his head. That's unlikely. Then is Lord Luo deliberately manufacturing a topic of discussion to buy some time? Are you waiting for reinforcements to arrive? Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment before saying, "Can't we just discuss things purely for what they are? Coupling isn't a basket that anyone can put on. An excessively broad definition would just lower its value. It's just like your meat bomb, where you've just produced clashes and chaos to stingily construct a new order. If you still persist in your views, then I will continue believing that you don't understand coupling." Snake Tongue didn't respond. Over at Heavenly Ocean Lake, Puppeteer was already pushed to his limits. "He's just buying time. A military aircraft is making its way over. I can see its lights." Actually, nothing really could be seen down in the pitch-black darkness in the depths of the night sky. But it was after-work rush hour right now. There were many layers of traffic, with the car lights creating a bit of a chaotic view. Those who had the relevant experience would find it easy to determine that these cars had received some information. The information being to make room for an ad hoc military ship landing. Snake Tongue was still quite calm. "Doesn't matter. In the current situation, as long as the three major players of Xia City don't rush over, there is no one who can help him escape from my trap." Puppeteer nearly cursed out. "You can come and go as you please with your soul body. I need time to retreat." He narrowly stuffed the emotions back down to his stomach. He understood that it was impossible for him to play with Snake Tongue to the end. He was determined to withdraw first. He glanced at his gasping safety line. She was useless now. "Forget it, I am extremely benevolent." I'll help you this one time. You all slowly play. I'm out of here. And before that, I'll need to leave some beautiful memories." Puppeteer gave Luo Nan and Zhu Lei a lustrous laugh, revealing a mouth full of white teeth. Then he used his wristband to contact Tank, who had yet to appear here. "Hello, Tank. Can you do something that will leave a deep impression, like setting some fires?" Luo Nan's hanging eyelids suddenly twitched twice. Zhu Lei instantly woke from his stupefaction and glanced back to the jungle of the wetlands in the distance. But it was already dark. He couldn't really see anything. Even if he could, it was impossible to expect good intentions from this group of people. Puppeteer continued chatting with Tank. "If time is a bit pressing, just burning the surface is fine. Pay attention to first destroy the fire control system." "Hot damn, that fast? All right, my words are useless. I believe in your expertise." F***. Zhu Lei thought about the misfortune the legendary building was suffering right now and felt that his hair was about to stand on end. He cursed and yelled, "Snake tongue, you dare." Puppeteer shrugged, "Forget her. This has nothing to do with me." Snake Tongue's voice remained gentle. "However, regret is a hook that is buried within memories. The most touching emotions of the world can be drawn. I don't mind if my collection is smeared with the color of tragedy." Puppeteer cursed to himself for how pretentious she was being. Behind the diving goggles, his eyes swept to look at Zhu Lei, who was on the verge of combusting, as well as the one sitting on the ground. Luo Nan was expressionless, with those bloody red eye sockets. "Tusk, say something. Are you trying to disgust people acting like this?" "All right, you've succeeded, we're disgusted." Puppeteer's smile broadened. "Okay, you all slowly chat then, I'm leaving first." "Oh, much thanks to you, Snake Tongue. You've saved me from using my safety line." He slightly stuck out the thumb of the hand gripping onto Tian Si's neck as he spoke. He used force to stir the girl's lower jaw, forcing her to become somewhat awake. Emotions of fear resurfaced in Tian Si's vacant and dim eyes. Puppeteer laughed in satisfaction and whistled. A boom sounded in the heavenly ocean lake. The devil ray smacked the water's surface in agitation. Its enormous mouth split open as it saw the human figure above it. It drooled with desire. Puppeteer chuckled, then deliberately raised his voice. "This is your bonus. Drag her down to the bottom and slowly enjoy her. Don't rush things too much. Let the people on the various floors see. And give our Mr. Luo adequate time to think. Which one should he save first? His mother's work, or his lover's life? Or maybe he won't be able to save either." His gaze pointed toward Luo Nan to lock with those blood-red eye sockets. He maintained his grin as he released his fingers, letting Tian Si fall down. The water rumbled as the devil ray flapped its fins. It flew straight up, and its large mouth opened to reveal fine teeth. It faced to meet the human. It was in this instant that Puppeteer saw blood overflow from Luo Nan's eye sockets. The flow of blood continued to engrave marks upon Luo Nan's face, and Puppeteer's heart was incomparably satisfied. He used 2 fingers that had been burdened with carrying food to gesture across his forehead, delivering his farewells. "Till next time." Puppeteer made a light jump, heading toward the dome. Just as he was about to leap over the steel frame, the muffled sound of something falling into the water resonated. The clear difference in sound made his heart skip a beat. He instinctively shifted his gaze to look down, and he saw the devil ray unfurl its long wing-like fins, which were over 15 meters wide. It looked like an enormous and aberrant bat as it soared to reach beneath his feet. The heck did it fly so high for? Oh, hold on, what was with the water sound? Great waves were billowing out within the heavenly ocean lake. Puppeteer's gaze deviated, and he saw a velvet skirt, which was puffed up a bit due to being soaked with water, move to and fro atop the water. Get away, Snake Tongue exploded with an unprecedented warning, causing Puppeteer to burst out with a cold shiver. However, this didn't obstruct his instincts, which he had tempered over the years, from leading him and forcing him to shift his position. And at practically the same time, a different heavy shout exploded directly on the mental plane. Puppeteer! Puppeteer knew that he absolutely couldn't be distracted, but the cold, sharp shout cut through to the depths of his soul, pressing Puppeteer to turn his head to lock gazes with the blood-filled eyes far in the distance. Lightning tore through the turbid blood, causing Luo Nan's eyes to dazzle with brilliance. Puppeteer instinctively squinted his eyes, even though he was wearing diving goggles. It was truly as if he were looking at a spear of lightning radiating within the night sky, and the spear came stabbing at his chest. At this moment, whatever instincts, whatever training he had, were turned to ash under the soul-rending attack. Puppeteer's body froze in an absolutely abnormal manner. The mutant Devil Ray had an enormous body, and the power at which it flew was extremely quick and ferocious. Even though Puppeteer had shifted a few feet, the distance he had moved wasn't enough. It was far from enough. Blood sprayed in a bout of rain as the corner teeth of the Devil Ray hooked on to Puppeteer's right arm. This was the same arm that had gripped Tian Si by the neck, and it separated from the body in an instant. Then came the strike from its wing-like fins. The hidden and mutated barbs directly pierced Puppeteer's chest and the ribs on his two sides. They stabbed evenly inside. The sharp pain woke him a little. With his life in danger, he pushed with his feet. This produced quite a bit of force, for he flew off to the side in retreat. But the whip-like tail, that was over 15 meters long of the Devil Ray, lashed out with a buzz, bringing a sound akin to chains rattling. The heavy attack struck Puppeteer dead in the face. His diving goggles split apart to reveal eyes nearly bulging out of their sockets, as well as emotions of incredulity. All of these disintegrated in the blink of an eye under the powerful explosive force. All that was left was a human body without a head, and that body fell into the heavenly ocean lake. A few bloody waves rippled out, before soon diluting into nothing. Chapter 310, Wheel of Time, Part 1-3. Translator, Strivon. After killing its previous controller in a single move, the Devil Ray sank down. Its enormous body was practically touching the surface of the water, but it didn't enter the water. It just flapped its powerful wing-like fins. In the end, fins weren't wings. The rate at which they moved up and down was very slow, but the air currents pierced through the center of the wave-like section, causing marvelous and powerful effects. The air converged layer upon layer, the density increasing to become a sole source of motive power. This caused the heavy, enormous body, which exceeded several tons, to be easily supported up in empty air. The over 15-meter-wide colossus hovered above the viewing platform. The sight might not be completely spectacular, but it inspired an abundance of horror. The water below was affected by the compressed air. Ripples and waves surged to bubble to the shore of the pool layer by layer. Tian Si, who had fallen into the water a moment ago, was lifted up by the surging waves. She lay dazed at the edge of the pool. As for the dead Puppeteer, his body was completely drowned within the waves of water. Not a trace could be seen. Why go through such detailed work when you can already control mutants? At least half of Snake Tongue's attention rested over at Heavenly Ocean Lake because of Puppeteer's death. The betrayal of the Devil Ray was within her expectations. Puppeteer, this half-assed puppet master, should die in such a fashion. It just happened sooner rather than later. And the mutant, who had a strengthened fleshly body, wasn't really a threat to her. What Snake Tongue truly cared about was the method Luo Nan used to control the Devil Ray. She saw the Devil Ray's performance. Tian Si and Puppeteer had both fallen into the water, but it had sent Tian Si to shore while leaving Puppeteer's corpse to sink into the watery depths. The distinction was quite clear. What was hard to imagine was the fact that the Devil Ray still complied to its nature in using waves. This was the Devil Ray's thinking, and it was a very human-like train of thought. This proved that Luo Nan's control over the Devil Ray was a surrender rather than a manipulation. Even for puppet masters, this was an extremely high-level skill. Puppeteer used special techniques to entwine his victims. What did Luo Nan do to overpower Puppeteer's control? Luo Nan must have started formulating and executing a plan from the moment Puppeteer revealed the Devil Ray. During this process, whether it was Puppeteer or Snake Tongue, all were completely ignorant of it. Even when the Devil Ray betrayed Puppeteer, Snake Tongue still wasn't certain of the techniques Luo Nan had employed within. This skill was completely missing from the intelligence they were given. Of course, Puppeteer was stunned by Luo Nan's deadly long-range bombardment, causing Puppeteer's death by the Devil Ray and leaving Luo Nan open for direct attacks from Snake Tongue. But obviously, Luo Nan wasn't restricted by Snake Tongue at all. What the heck did her wrestle on the mental plane even mean? This fellow is like a treasury, no, a weapons depot. Snake Tongue was completely unable to guess what this seemingly young, inexperienced, and biased teenager can fish up in the next moment. Formatting theory and coupling theory were they production lines for mental weapons. The impact of Puppeteer's immediate death made Snake Tongue clearly think things over much more. So much so that she forgot for a moment that now was not a good time to go pondering things. She felt a slight jolt, and the location of her soul body was locked upon. Snake Tongue's mind became a bit heavy, and she saw Luo Nan turn his head to look at her from the edge of the viewing platform. Lightning stained with blood tore from his eye sockets to pierce through space. It was the same move that was employed against Puppeteer. Snake Tongue had already exposed the location of her soul body for the sake of better realizing a wrestle on the mental plane with Luo Nan. She faced Luo Nan with Black Beetle's ruined body between them. Back then, she was confident that Luo Nan could only struggle in a dirty wrestle on the mental plane. She thought that it would be hard for Luo Nan to bring out long-range attacks. She had no fear, for she was confident. But Puppeteer's death woke her up. I made a completely wrong judgment. Snake Tongue knew that it was too late to avoid the attack. She could only rely on her fortifications to withstand it. But then, the tyrannical attack didn't come as predicted. Only a strand of wind came. A ray of light. It was a bit warm, but the wind blew with the heat of the sun, penetrating her thoroughly. What the? Snake Tongue felt that things were off. On the mental plane, creeping grass, leaves, and vines noiselessly shook as they intertwined over and over. They formed a special construction that covered most of the viewing platform area. The complicated structure on the surface would make one neglect the roots of the vines. But actually, every coarse vine had a spot in the soil from which to draw life. Luo Nan had cleared the area early on, knocking out several dozen tourists. Snake Tongue used these people as compost to plant her nightmare vine spell. She used the power of these dozens of people's blood, energies, and souls to weave a net. This became the foundation for her fortifications. This method was similar to Puppeteer's safety line. It was just more exquisite. Not only could she divert mental attacks, she could also forcefully stimulate everybody's hidden potential and cause the nightmare vine to grow wildly. The vines would become resources that Snake Tongue could control, suitable for attacking and defending. However, Luo Nan's mental attack didn't arrive. What did arrive was merely a slight brush of wind, a glimmer of shining light. It passed through between the gaps in the Nightmare Vine spell structure, exploiting the weakest and most fatal locations. Not a single hole it didn't pass, and it made Snake Tongue feel that the layers upon layers of fortifications she constructed were already seeped with water. An ominous dark cloud covered Snake Tongue's mind for the first time. What Luo Nan chose to do made Snake Tongue much more wary than the methods he employed before. This young man easily disposed of a powerful enemy in retaliation. He should be using the momentum of his victory to persist in seeking a second success. He should be carried by that victorious experience. But Luo Nan didn't do that. All intelligence showed that this teenager lacked combat experience. But after performing an inconceivable reversal of a situation, the kid used the most correct and the wisest method to see through the trap behind her fortifications. This was something hard to explain using experience or even intuition. It's actually on the same level of certainty and naturalness as writing the correct test answer. Snake Tongue knew that if the wind, the light, continued to permeate, then her foundation would be completely peeled clean. This was undoubtedly Luo Nan's mental attack, and it would completely tear apart her defenses. What should I do? Over 100 thoughts flowed through her mind, but all were useless because she couldn't see through Luo Nan anymore. Beep, 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 beep. A sound was coming from Luo Nan's wristband. The control center of Gear had issued a warning remotely when Gear's fire control system had lost connection. Tank's destruction still continued. It was just a matter of time with the fire. Luo Nan's face was as dark as water. Snake Tongue could feel the mania within the soul's strength that was casted over. A dense and cold killing intent shone through the glimmering wind. Luo Nan held nothing back. But the permeating power wasn't affected. Luo Nan just shifted his gaze away to turn toward the space above the heavenly ocean lake and point directly at the devil ray hovering in the air above the water. Then came the sound of surging water, and the hovering height of the devil ray increased. The long wing-like fins flapped a bit, and it flew away from the space above the heavenly ocean lake. It pressed to the edge of the viewing platform. In this instant, the devil ray brought Luo Nan, Black Beetle's ruined body, and Snake Tongue's soul body under the shadow of its flat expanse. Before Snake Tongue could realize what was going on, the devil ray's wing-like fins struck out, and Black Beetle's ruined body ahead was like a basketball exploding. His entire body shriveled as he was thrown nearly 30 meters away. He didn't stop until he collided with a decorative statue on the viewing platform. The explosive attack was of pure force. It didn't knock Black Beetle off balance, it simply pulverized him. Snake Tongue's heart was uneasy, so she didn't react in time. The meat bomb couldn't even explode before it was disposed of. At least 80% of the bones were reduced to smithereens, and the body was like a punctured sack of water. Blood continued to gush out. With a broken foundation, Black Beetle's wraith was like a candle flame within the wind. It flared twice before completely going out. Snake Tongue didn't even have the time to groan. This attack was likely the expression of venting some feelings. Then what did this mean? Controlling the Devil Ray, killing Puppeteer, and eliminating Black Beetle. At the same time, he grasped dominance in offense and defense on the mental plane. Today atop the viewing platform, Luo Nan was the master. Whatever he did was correct. Snake Tongue lost a bargaining chip with the elimination of the meat bomb. The situation turned for the worse for her. Looking at the so-called wrestle of soul strength right now, Snake Tongue felt that this was a self-directed, self-acted, and narcissistic comedy show by Luo Nan. The comedy was insurmountable. Even now, she didn't understand how Luo Nan was able to divvy out a portion of his strength to control the Devil Ray, kill Puppeteer, and come at her with a killer attack in the blink of an eye. It can't be that Luo Nan's soul strength was infinite without bounds, right? His body. How can his body endure it? To the side, the Devil Ray's body was excessively large. It was hard for it to control its balance in the air. It had just slapped the meat bomb away, and now the tip of its other fin struck the protective glass at the edge of the viewing platform without a hint of caution. It directly broke open a huge hole. Shards went flying everywhere, some falling atop Luo Nan's and Zhu Lei's heads. Zhu Lei raised his head to look at the ferocious, bloody mouth cavities on the belly of the Devil Ray and was a bit stunned. The belly looked like it shrunk a bit. The Devil Ray was certainly keyed up. However, Zhu Lei didn't understand how the situation reached this stage. "Give me a hand, Lister." Luo Nan supported himself against the protective glass as he slowly stood up, but his legs were still weak. Zhu Lei was unable to think too much. He rushed to seize Luo Nan by the arm, only then did he grimace. You did all this. Relax, it's quite obedient." It was just as Luo Nan said. The Devil Ray behaved in very docile manner, as if it had regained traces of its nature before mutating. The tiny caved-in part of its stomach possessed an invisible magnetic field, counteracting most of gravity. The compressed air that flowed around its wing-like fins stirred up faint ripples and waves, fine-tuning the balance of the Devil Ray based on its posture. The skill of low-altitude floating showed here. The Devil Ray dropped straight down until it was only 15 centimeters above the ground. It acted as a first-class step, but it was just a bit too wide. Its enormous body seemed to ripple endlessly, but not even a hair of it touched the ground. It just sprinkled water droplets onto the floor tiles of the platform. Luo Nan sized the Devil Ray up in silence. He felt the obedience and fear coming from the Leviathan. On a plane untouchable to the vast majority of people, the high-imitation version of the human-faced arachnid had already assimilated most of its body into the Devil Ray. Incorporeal spider threads bore through the body, penetrating and winding around practically every vital organ of the Devil Ray. The Devil Ray was now a temporary host for the parasitic human-faced arachnid. If the situation was just this, the Devil Ray would still have some leeway to struggle. Its problem was, on a marvelous plane within the Star River landscape of Luo Nan's mental clairvoyance, dark chains invaded and locked the life sketch of the Devil Ray. Every one of its stars was punctured, weaving a three-dimensional drawing more abstract than before. Within the deep vibrato of chains, the Devil Ray no longer had way of freedom from inside to out. It could only bow its head. Luo Nan reached out with a hand, touching the side of its fins, which were making wave-like movements. The outside was covered in a layer of sticky liquid, making Luo Nan's hand cold and slick. However, the strength was considerable. Luo Nan's palm was numb from the shock. "Your Nanster don't." Zhu Lei suddenly realized what Luo Nan wanted to do, but he had just opened his mouth when Luo Nan stepped on without speaking a word. The current devil ray was like a magic rug from folklore. It awaited its master for boarding. Chapter 311, Wheel of Time, Part 2-3. Translator Strivon. It was reasonable for Zhu Lei to be worried. It was hard to stand steadily on the smooth and soft back of the devil ray. Plus, right now Luo Nan was very weak. Were it not for Zhu Lei supporting him, he would have fallen down as soon as his other foot left the ground. Luo Nan had no intentions of giving up partway. He took in a deep breath, and the lightning in his eye sockets flashed once more. The marvelous power of the large and small gears coupling penetrated through his body. It was like the stimulation from defibrillation. All the pores in his body opened up, and a tingly heat condensed in a small circle within and outside his body. Zhu Lei was caught off guard by the sensation of electricity running through his palm. He loosened his grip by reflex, but his reaction was top-notch in terms of swiftness. He reached out to support Luo Nan again, but Luo Nan already stepped out with his left foot at the edge of the devil ray's back. He was really standing atop the flat body of the devil ray. The devil ray wasn't quite used to it. The degree its body undulated suddenly increased. Luo Nan's body began to lean forward helplessly. However, the coupling effect of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice illuminated in a timely fashion. A mass of predictive lines were laid out. It was as if an invisible spiderweb unfurled upon the devil ray's back. The stick strength, namely the sense of balance between the devil ray and Luo Nan, was marvelous and rapidly increasing. Luo Nan's own predictions toward the control of the devil ray, and the information-sharing mode formed from the coupling of the large and small gears, allowed Luo Nan's foresight to permeate deep within the devil ray's body. Luo Nan could see every single corner outside and inside the devil ray, as well as all its emotional changes. Actually, his heart lantern of the eye's orifice had yet to fully mature, but the transformation that arose from coupling exceeded the limits of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Gym Master Ziu had said, "The soul heart lantern illuminates the 9 netherworlds." Luo Nan had yet to see the 9 netherworlds, but the clarity of his heart depths was not inferior. Aside from being separated by skin and flesh, right now Luo Nan and the devil ray could be said to be of one body, with Luo Nan's will in the center. In this state, Luo Nan stepped out, and this was enough to eliminate his momentum from leaning forward. He rocked a little bit and grasped his balance. It appeared dangerous, but he was actually quite stable. The devil ray's body endlessly rippled beneath his feet. Luo Nan thought for a moment, then decided to simply stop moving. The devil ray's flat body's shaking intensity increased. With controlling intent, Luo Nan stepped on this rippling body to move levelly across. He moved until he reached the head section of the devil ray. With a mere thought, the 2 long head fins of the devil ray flipped up. These things were used by the devil ray to help catch prey. At that moment, Luo Nan used them as handrails. He held them to stand firmly upon the devil ray's giant body. It was certainly a bit awkward to hold on to the head fins of the devil ray. However, the devil ray's fear of Luo Nan remained a dense cloud of thunder in its heart. The behavior of its enormous body was naturally led and affected by these emotions. The flapping rate of its wing-like fins increased by quite a margin. Nanster, don't be impulsive. Zhu Lei wanted to jump up as well, but if he did, the balance Luo Nan had with the devil ray would instantly be broken. It would be very difficult for Luo Nan to adjust. Therefore, the devil ray shook its body in a very unfriendly manner. It floated up, not giving Zhu Lei a chance. Zhu Lei was worried, but he had some energy. He looked at where Luo Nan's gaze was directed. It was cast into the jungle behind the darkness of the night sky. How could Zhu Lei not know what his best friend was thinking? Zhu Lei went, "Hey, hey," immediately, but he stumbled on his words. He was unable to say anything to stop Luo Nan. He could only ask Zhang Yingying for help. Hurry up and persuade Nanster. He's going to ride the fish and fly over. What? The situation had changed far too quickly, with most of the key details occurring on the mental plane. Zhang Yingying wasn't clear on the changes in circumstances on the viewing platform. She just felt that there was something wrong with her ears. It sounded like Zhu Lei's mouth had cramped up. Precisely in her bafflement, Luo Nan actually took the initiative to contact her. "Give me information on Tank." "Tank, I say." "At once." Luo Nan's voice wasn't high in volume, but the depth of it agitated one's heart. Zhang Yingying became inexplicably timid. She hemmed and hawed. "That person's body is of excellent quality, and he has outstanding mastery over it. He can strengthen parts of his body's defensive power at the last minute, but other than that he's nothing special." Is his defensive power formidable? It seemed that Luo Nan didn't quite understand. "What's going on over there? Hey Nanster, you, oh my God." Before Zhang Yingying could finish speaking, a terrifying deep whistle exploded from her side. Her heart suddenly tightened, and she felt the blood rush from her head. Her brain felt dizzy, and her entire body felt terrible. She cut off the communications by reflex. Her body's feelings improved a bit, but by the time she came to, she could only look at the severed communications indication and smacked her head. The devil ray rose 7-ish meters above the viewing platform. It suddenly opened its enormous mouth. At the same time, the 2 columns and 4 rows for a total of 8 mouth slits opened up below its stomach. This location would be the location of the cheeks for a normal devil ray. But after the mutation, this part had been alienized. Now there were residues of oceanic flesh left from the destruction in the crystal pillar, giving the mutant a tyrannical air. A low-frequency hissing was coming out from the enormous mouth and the slits. The hissing sound was propelled by enormous pressure to diffuse in all directions. The rumbling vibration was like a heavy train galloping across. It caused every frame, structure, and protective glass to intensely vibrate atop the viewing platform. It was like an earthquake was happening. But this deep hissing sound didn't even last 5 seconds. The platform suddenly went silent. It wasn't that the sound had stopped. The sound waves had simply changed frequencies. It had gone below the 20 Hz boundary, entering the infrasonic wave realm. The vibrations transmitting through the air didn't directly affect Snake Tongue, but they were able to stupefy her. The penetration power of the infrasonic waves was formidable. The information transmitted was accurate. The life forms in the ocean felt a sense of danger through it, and they discerned the direction it came from. However, there were few things that could produce such powerful sound waves at will. Theoretically speaking, the mutant devil ray with its enormous mass and pure fleshly power should be close to A rank. Its fleshly body was strong and flexible. as long as the body was put to appropriate use. High frequencies and low frequencies were easy when using the cavities to emit sound. It made sense. The key lay in the application. The Devil Ray possessed the ability to produce ferocious and shocking infrasonic waves, but this wasn't part of its natural instinct. It lacked this instinct even after the mutation. If it had, it would have displayed a shocking change in how it hunted prey. The management of Cloud City Water Village wouldn't have placed this dangerous large beast into the crystal pillar. In other words, Luo Nan reprogrammed the way the Devil Ray applied its power after controlling it. What other changes could he induce? How did Luo Nan do this? And what did he plan to use infrasonic waves for? A series of questions piled up to combine into one with the dark cloud snake tongue harbored in her mind. This made her feel that her luck was turning for the worse. Her train of thought was unavoidably influenced by these series of changes. She became somewhat distracted. But suddenly, a substantial psychic pressure pressed down upon her in this moment, making her mind shiver. A drifting curtain had been erected atop the viewing platform. For the sake of better producing sound waves, the Devil Ray's enormous body went nearly 90 degrees vertical. Although it was like this, it formed a sunken pit in the flesh of its back, giving Luo Nan a support point to maintain balance. Right now, Luo Nan grasped its head fins in his hands. His vision rested over the colossus by a head. His relative height exceeded 10 meters. In this towering situation, he seemed like a god riding a demonic beast, and he looked down upon Snake Tongue's soul body from above. Luo Nan's eye sockets remained flowing with blood, but the dazzling lightning continued to flash within. It radiated with brilliance, revealing a different sort of cold intent. A jolt ran through Snake Tongue's mind, but her pride made her refuse to continue being controlled by Luo Nan. She immediately adjusted the wind, the medium she used to talk, and she spoke cheerily, "Lord Luo, the winds are strong up high. You should be careful. Maybe you need my help. I can talk with Tank." She suddenly stopped, talking halfway through. The high-pressure infrasonic waves didn't directly destroy Snake Tongue's vocal spell, but the most suitable frequency was calibrated after a period of time. Changes subsequently came. Atop the viewing platform, the tourists, who had been knocked unconscious by Luo Nan early on, still maintained a murky consciousness. However, they began to groan and struggle in their dazes as if they were in nightmares. Snake Tongue understood the true target of the infrasonic waves at last. The vehicles for her Nightmare Vine spell were suffering from the attack of the infrasonic waves. They caused a dangerous resonance to form in the tourists' chests. Wasn't this no different from mass murder? The Nightmare Vine spell was erected upon people's bodies, using them as vehicles. If this group of people were to all die, the spell would naturally disintegrate. But Snake Tongue had analyzed Luo Nan's temperament before. She didn't believe that this teenager had the guts to wipe out several dozen. No, hundreds of people. It must be known that the penetration power of infrasonic waves was considerable. Finding the right frequency, with the mutant devil raised near A-rank level in power, required sweeping enormous sound waves through the core of the viewing platform. The civilians, several dozen floors below, would likely all die as well. But looking at Luo Nan's attitude, could it be that his mother's work being on the verge of destruction had agitated Luo Nan enough to lose all sense of reason? Just looking at those eyes, interwoven with a bloody glow and flaring lightning, made Snake Tongue terrified of confirming this. A second later, or maybe even less time than that, Snake Tongue suddenly heard Luo Nan speak. I shouldn't be wasting any further time on you, but I need practice. Luo Nan spoke openly, with not a hint of coloration from emotions. This showed that Luo Nan still maintained his sense of reason. However, the strength of his rationality was unable to contain his restless killing intent. Snake Tongue didn't understand what Luo Nan meant by practice, but she soon realized that Luo Nan had excellent control over the infrasonic waves, whether it was in intensity or in scope of influence. Luo Nan did this accurate work with the Devil Ray in a way utterly incomprehensible to Snake Tongue. He caused several dozens of people to wander above the line between life and death, but they didn't make contact with the line. Soon, the results of this method revealed themselves. The resonance of the heart and lung organs wasn't so intense that it was fatal. It just sent the unconscious people's blood and energies into turbulence. This affected the functions of their nervous systems, forming all sorts of unwellness for those unconscious. It formed unsteady states of chaotic thoughts and bad feelings. Snake Tongue knew that things were bad. The fortifications formed from the Nightmare Vine spell had the primary functions of diverting and blood drawing, most especially the latter. The spell needed external energy. It stimulated the potential of its victims and drew their energies to strengthen itself. But these people's blood and energies were now a big mess thanks to Luo Nan's meddling. They couldn't possibly have any potential energy now. It was fine if this was the case with only one or two of them, but with several dozen of them like this, even though Snake Tongue was a mage, it was impossible for her to control the situation in such a short time frame. Plus, there existed the rush of power from the whiplash in the midst of this chaos. A strange feeling came at the same time as the whiplash. It was as if several dozen invisible hammers were fiercely bombarding into the roots of the Nightmare Vine spell. Lightning even coursed through. Chapter 312, Wheel of Time, Part 3-3. Translator, Strivon. Snake Tongue never expected that the situation would be reversed in this fashion. Luo Nan played a hand of beautiful dominoes. They were standing in several dozen lines, and they fell down one by one on the material plane. They affected each other, working with each other. They inconceivably yet logically affected the mental plane, warping the defensive structure of the Nightmare Vine spell. The mental attack Snake Tongue was most vigilant of hadn't even appeared on stage yet, and her fortifications that she built with painstaking effort was at near collapse. Snake Tongue currently stood in the center of her fortifications. Her mind wavered and she grew fretful. This was more or less caused by the whiplash of her Nightmare Vine spell. At first, she thought that Luo Nan was going to destroy the foundation of her spell and dig open her fortifications. But after 2 rounds of whiplashes, she felt that there was something off with the situation. Under the attack of Luo Nan's infrasonic waves, the Nightmare Vine spell's coarse vines didn't wither as expected. Instead, it was as if they had consumed stimulants. They stirred restlessly without end. Snake Tongue knew of her own matters. She knew the method that she used to erect her fortifications. She had taken some shortcuts. The whiplash formed was truly troublesome, needless to say of its collapse. Luo Nan's methods and train of thought made her mind be driven by fear. I can't keep wasting time. The intense thought to retreat surged for the first time in Snake Tongue's mind. But this thought had just barely formed when a strong pressure suddenly erupted. The blood-devouring intent of the Nightmare Vine spell had found the closest target. Snake Tongue knew that things weren't good. She immediately started chanting. She would disperse the nightmare vine spell regardless of the consequences. However, the terrible feeling of being seen through by Luo Nan became clear once more. She used her clairvoyance by instinct, and she saw Luo Nan's eyes. Blood and flame interwove within them, yet they were so penetratingly cold that they cut through her heart. The mental attack came. It was somewhat different than the heavy hammer-type bombardment that was in the intelligence briefing. Within her chaotic defensive system, silently came a sharp blade piercing in. The soul attack stabbed through all her defenses, piercing the weakest area of Snake Tongue's soul body. This attack didn't directly cause Snake Tongue serious damage, but Snake Tongue had been preparing a spell, and she was interrupted. Her last chance of possibly controlling the Nightmare Vine spell was severed. But from Snake Tongue's perspective, the most fatal thing lay in the defensive system of the Nightmare Vine spell. It now became an invisible cage on the mental plane, trapping her and binding her within. She wouldn't be able to struggle free any time soon at all. Snake Tongue used all her power to try various methods. This included the interference transformation between the mental and material planes that she dreaded using previously. However, this was totally useless. Instead, with these series of attempts, with her excessive interference with the material plane, her soul body gradually showed itself. Nanster, you're playing with something big now, huh? Zhu Lei rubbed his stomach as he walked from behind the enormous back of the Devil Ray. He made his way around, and he suddenly saw a specter appear in the air ahead. It vaguely looked like a woman, and this specter glowed green within the night. Under careful examination, the glow was coming from a screen that hung to the ground. Half of it covered the back, while half of it covered the weak figure in front. Such an appearance was akin to a ghost or a spirit. Her expressions were faint and couldn't be seen clearly. It looked like she could scatter into the wind at any time. But after a few more rounds of careful examination, there appeared to be several dozen strips of smoke surrounding this fragile woman. The strips weaved and twined, tying into each other. They were graceful like feathers or streamers, yet they were as malevolent as a prison or shackles. This is Snake Tongue. Zhu Lei guessed correctly, but he was still a bit confused. He didn't know why this mysterious and powerful foe had suddenly revealed herself, especially in this form. Her appearance was absolutely disconnected with the ugly and vile appearance of Black Beetle's ruined body. Snake Tongue wasn't concerned with what she looked like. Right now, there was absolutely no one in her eyes besides Luo Nan. Her soul out of body was pressured to become visible. From her perspective, the situation had completely collapsed. And all of this was caused by the teenager atop the Devil Ray's head. It was impossible for Snake Tongue to accept the process that led to such a result. Since Luo Nan began to truly display his power and use his techniques, Snake Tongue didn't know half of what he had done. In other words, her confusion had dropped her in such a conclusion. The most preposterous thing was that she and Luo Nan were still wrestling with their soul's strengths. But was there any point to this wrestle? She got the clear feeling that Luo Nan was only using a pinky to hold her in place. He was free to do what he wanted with the rest of his strength, and so this was the result self-realized by Snake Tongue. It wasn't that she never experienced something like this before, she just never imagined that this would appear because of a teenager. What was reflected within was no longer strength, but a difference in foresight. Snake Tongue composed herself a little. She could be said to have suffered a crushing defeat in today's clash of forces. However, It was rather premature for her to consign to hopelessness. She was someone who had accumulated much experience in the world. She soon adjusted her state of mind. She stopped considering struggling, and she didn't have her figure fade from the material plane. Rather, she took on a can't-be-picky attitude and faced Luo Nan, who towered on top of the Devil Ray's head, then bowed as a greeting. She did her utmost to maintain a tranquil tone as she admitted, "Lord Luo is brilliant. I am defeated." Aside from an ice-cold gaze, Luo Nan didn't give her anything at all. Snake Tongue stood up straight after performing some salutations. She tilted her head slightly upward to lock with Luo Nan's ice-cold gaze. Her posture was meaningless in her soul body, but it was meant for courtesy and the situation. "Since I've admitted defeat, I won't cause any further troubles for Lord Luo. I hope I can obtain some preferable treatment." Luo Nan maintained his silence, but the Nightmare Vine spell grew more restless on the mental plane. This was the most direct response. On the material plane, visible to the naked eye, the dark smoke outside Snake Tongue's body grew threefold in volume. The power at which they twisted and twined grew more and more apparent. A shiver ran through Snake Tongue's mind, but she continued trying to use communication to resolve the problem. She threw out a bargaining chip. "Lord Luo, I can order Tank to stop his actions right now. I will kill him." This was a simple sentence by Luo Nan, but his words had nearly shoved Snake Tongue's words back down her throat. She floundered for a second before saying, "Lord Luo, please don't be impulsive. I want to save your mother's precious work. That's the most." The whistling sound of the wind crushed Snake Tongue's words. The Devil Ray had begun flapping its wing-like fins with great power. The compressed air rumbled as they flowed, the power astonishing. It soared several meters up in the air, looking as if it would soar through the skies at a moment's notice. Luo Nan stared at Snake Tongue from his higher position. "You keep on resisting. I've already wasted 2 minutes with you." Of course Snake Tongue was resisting. Even though she lost, she had no reason to let Luo Nan go and kill her comrade. Clearly, there was an enormous difference in understanding between the two. It was unavoidable for her thoughts to darken. Yet she saw Luo Nan close his eyes at this time. His eyelids still trembled. This movement allowed Snake Tongue to confirm something. Luo Nan was certainly extremely exhausted. That's right. How could his body endure executing these terrifying techniques over and over again? Maybe she should continue to stall for time. This thought just stirred within her when Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes. Lightning flared within those bloody sockets. "And you're continuing to waste time." His voice fell, and the Nightmare Vine spell, which was already accustomed to devouring its master, contracted violently. At the same time, the second mental attack already arrived. Snake Tongue suffered attacks from 2 sides. Her specter rippled and contorted. It seemed that she might vanish. She did her best to resist while rousing her glib tongue, doing her best to persuade him. "Lord Luo, I admit that I'll receive heavy injuries if you continue clinging to this course of action. But like you said, the direct abrasion and contention of your large and small gears will make you have no future to speak of." Formatting theory. Coupling. How can you validate these elite theories in this case? Luo Nan heard everything and subconsciously loosened a grip on a head fin of the Devil Ray. He caressed his own cheek. It was a bit numb. He used a bit more strength, and there was the horrible feeling of laceration. But what did this matter? If my mother had compromised for the sake of her life, then I wouldn't exist on this earth. If I make a compromise over my mother's word with you despicable bastards, there will still be stains left even if gear is preserved. And it leaves you free to come any time for a second try. Luo Nan's voice went low and husky. He was practically speaking to himself. These were his thoughts, his ideas. He really didn't know what was right or wrong. But today, his emotions, his wisdom, his blood, and his energy all resonated together to obtain this answer. There was no glossing over this. Snake Tongue didn't even have the time to be angry when she was called a despicable bastard. She saw the devil ray rush straight up, and the countless vines shed continuously under the noiseless roar. There weren't any material sound waves, but a vibration burst out on the mental plane, like that of a sword cutting through several hundred bow strings of a dragon net. Snap, 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 snap. The beat exploded continuously in the depths of her mind. Her manifested ghostly body soared up into the air, not of her volition. Gales raged. The sky and the earth spun. The net that was the nightmare vine's spell wrapped her up to drift within the night's wind. She was like a bound bird or beast that a hunter carried back after a successful expedition. The series of disgraces darkened Snake Tongue's thoughts even further. The poisonous hate seared her heart, and she yelled sharply, addressing Luo Nan by name for the first time, "Luo Nan, you better not have regrets." What answered her were the sonic claps of the devil ray's wing-like fins producing wind. The devil ray flew out of the viewing platform in an instant, entering the vast and empty skies a kilometer in altitude. Luo Nan was situated atop the devil ray's head, and he looked down. The heart lantern illuminated from above, shining upon everything. Whatever darkness, jungle, building there were, they were unable to be sheltered. No object existed in Luo Nan's eyes besides a fine gear embedded within the depths of the boundless jungle. It shone clearly. This was the first time Luo Nan used coupling and the heart lantern for clairvoyance for this long. It was a marvelous sensation, like the bubbling water of a spring that gushed out from underground. Was it the heart lantern shining upon gear, or had gear's divine light entered his heart? It must be the latter. It was the purest light within the darkness, a pupil that circulated with ripples of life. Over there, the pupil billowed, flickered, revolved, and pulled the long river of time. It took the vestiges of the ancient past and manifested them to the present, transforming into indescribable emotions as it silently gazed at him. Mother! A completely irrational thought plucked at his heartstrings. Luo Nan was a bit dazed, but soon he strove to open his eyes. He wanted to engrave this pupil into the bottom of his heart. But the gleaming mutual shining of light only lasted an instant, and the dirty colors churned back up within the pure luster. Thick smoke and flame unbridledly smeared it, causing wanton destruction. It was as if Luo Nan had been punched hard in the chest. A flame scorched all the way into his eyes, and the poisonous smoke it brought was poured into his heart and lungs. The scene was instantly transformed into that of fire. It's burning. The flames boiled within his organs. The most ridiculous bit of hope he had in his heart became part of the poisonous smoke. Luo Nan subconsciously tightened his grip on the thick head fins of the devil ray. The pain of his burning heart and scorching lungs and his fury exploded upward. They split his throat as he screamed in agony. The devil ray below his feet felt the emotions of its controller. Its body was already enormous, but it suddenly expanded by a factor. Its enormous mouth and the 8 mouth slits on its cheeks opened up. The drive of the powerful pressure of sound produced sound waves in a frequency that was far below the limits of what a human could hear. The sound waves fused with Luo Nan's violent emotions, and as one, they pierced through the air. That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next episode.